righty, folks. Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that covers college basketball and the NBA draft inside and out. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Drew Barton and Zach Wilhelm, both Bay Area. Well, actually, you don't live in the Bay Area, do you, Zach? Though you go to school at San Francisco. Where exactly are you?
I'm in Orange County, California. It's in between San Diego and LA. They have a satellite campus here.
Ah, I see.
Yep.
It's been a couple of weeks since we did the show and in the usual format, and we've had an amazing run of interviews, 11 over the past 3 weeks. 9 of those interviews comprised our last 3 episodes, but now we're back and we'll jump right into our college notebook. We're going to start with Zach today because last week, Zach is an intern with us till, I think, 2030. Is that when?
Yeah, 2025, but we'll see, I guess.
And, well, yes. And so Zach's been doing a lot of our video work, doing some scouting and doing some research for us. He was on, you were on an episode, one of our preseason episodes. You helped with.
Yeah, the Pac-12 preview.
Right. And but today what we did was Zach went out to USF at Chase Center to watch Gonzaga and USF. So we want to hear what his thoughts about that game, Gonzaga, USF. Of course, since then, each team has played another game. Also, we want to talk about the top prospects in the game. So go ahead, Zach. Tell us about your trip to San Francisco.
Yeah, I mean, first, just kind of want to point out that being at the Chase Center, it was pretty cool. It was a cool experience. I have to admit, I'm a graduate of USF, so I go there now as a master's student, but I also went there back in 2010. So the environment wasn't really college. It wasn't a great college atmosphere just because the place is so large and brand new.
The same thing goes, like Villanova plays occasionally where the Sixers play, and they've been doing that for years. So it was the Spectrum, and then whatever they call that new building now. They may even build another one. They seem to build like new buildings every 10 years there, but it's the same thing. It's a mixed crowd. It's people who can't get tickets to campus games or aren't on campus. It's a more generic crowd as opposed to a college crowd.
Yeah, and I think Gonzaga travels well, so they had a lot of fans there too. To start the game, USF looked good. The teams looked pretty even actually. USF was hitting threes. They were playing good D. I think that in the overall game, they won the turnover battle. So they were playing hard. And I think they should have gone into half with the lead actually, but they kind of let it slip.
They were trailing by 2, I think.
Yeah, like 2 or 1 even, I think. It was like might have been 35-34.
35-34, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they let up like a layup or something like right as the buzzer hit or something like that, close to the end of the half. And so they felt like I think they should have gone up with the lead, but we know Gonzaga is just they're a solid team and they come out firing in the second half. And they did that. And they went on I think a 9 or 10-0 run to start the second half. USF could not score. They couldn't contain Graham Ike. Heard Ryan Nembhard's name a lot. He was playing great on defense and offense. And yeah, I mean, Gonzaga just really dominated in the second half. And that's what the story of the game seemed to be. It was kind of close. It was a cool experience. But then Gonzaga really just dominated in the second half. USF's big man, Bogo, we've had him on the show. They run a lot of offense through him. So if he's being contained or if something's,
he also got in foul trouble, I believe, didn't he?
Yeah, he was in foul trouble in the first half. Yeah.
So you couldn't go to both. I guess they have simultaneous press conferences.
They did, yeah. That was something I found out.
That's often the case, and that's a problem. I wish they would do them back to back. Rutgers, for example, when I go there, they do them, visiting team first, home team second, so you can talk to both coaches. But if you want to talk to the players for the visiting team, you can't listen to Rutgers press conference. So you always got to make a choice.
Yeah.
So you had
I don't even think Gonzaga head coach or the players had a real press conference. I think there was like they had, if you wanted to talk to them, you could go into this room and just talk to them.
Yeah.
And then there was a full press conference set up for the USF coach. And
that's sometimes the case. Sometimes you even have to go in the locker room,
Yeah. Yeah. So we went with USF's after talking to you, and they were hosting us and everything. So we went with USF's, and it really, I think the game, what it came down to was just that they couldn't contain the points in the paint. I think they scored 52 points in the paint or something like that, and it's like they dominated. So
right. So who impressed you the most? Watching the game, seeing him live, and by the way, were you on press row?
No, I wasn't. So I was able to get down for the beginning of the game, but we were up in the Michelob Ultra Club.
Okay.
So there was 10 seats on the baseline, and I wasn't.
Right. Yeah.
We're not there yet. We will maybe someday.
Seating. Yes. Sometimes they don't put you there. Okay. Yeah. So, but still, you got to see a good view of the game. Was there any particular player that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, for Gonzaga's side, definitely Graham Ike. I mean, he's a dominant player. He has good moves inside. He played solid defense as well, and he was just under control. It seemed like they couldn't stop him. He was making the right reads, whether it was like, little jump shots or in the paint or making the pass to the next guy for the little jumper or whatever. But he really impressed me. I mean, he was the standout player for sure in that game.
Right.
That for sure.
I think in terms of pro potential, I am somewhat suspect of Ike. He has the body. We'll talk about him later. He's actually going to be on Who's Hot, so I won't go into that now. But he's definitely a hot player, and we'll kind of dive more into his pro potential. All right, so Drew, you're a big Zags fan, and they got St. Mary's, though. St. Mary's game really didn't mean much to well, I wouldn't say it didn't mean much, but they had first place.
When your little brother and big brother comes to town, if it doesn't mean much to you, then that's why your little brother.
Right, but what I'm saying is they already had the top seed locked up in the tournament. But in terms of seeding in March Madness and stuff, the game still did have a lot of implications. So Gonzaga won that game, and so they basically pummeled USF and they handled St. Mary's. So and to me now they're looking like a lock to get in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be honest, Rich, and I think you and I have talked about this going back to when they won at Kentucky. I know that the big dialogue or one of the big discourses has been is this the end of the run? What's wrong with the Zags? I think you and I have been kind of ahead of this curve after the Kentucky game. I remember us both going, I think they're in. Now, seeding wise, at the time they were probably going to be one of those, dangerous 11, 10 seed lines. But I think this trip was kind of just a reminder that when this team is playing at its peak, outside of, I would say, probably the top 8 teams in the country, whether you want to go off the AP poll or our own list that we discussed, I would not want to see these guys. And this goes back to the point that I made when we did I wasn't on the WCC preview, but I remember early on I made the point about this team was always going to take time to gel. This entire roster, with the exception of Ben Gregg, was coming into a completely new role or a completely new system than what
I mean, Gregg's in a new role too. He started.
And I was going to say, and then even Gregg, halfway through the year, he was put into a new role. So there wasn't a single player on this team that came in with a similar job that they had in the past. I mean, Ike, people forget, I believe it was 16 to 18 months of no basketball because of his injury to his was his foot or his leg. Nembhard, the hardest position to play in basketball and probably the most important in college basketball is point guard, and he was coming to a whole new system. Steele Venters goes down with an injury I believe 2 days before the season starts. Dusty's a true freshman. Huff is really a fresh. I mean, he's redshirt, but this is his first real
Redshirt
game.
freshman, yeah.
You know, Watson is being put from the glue to early in the year. It was like, Watson, you have to carry us until we figure this out. And he tried. I mean, he had some big games early in the year. Hickman went from complimentary piece to lead scoring guard duties now. So it was always going to take time to gel. And I think what we saw, and we can get into this, you know, later, and we know I ride for the team, but they are far and away the best team in the conference, in my opinion, and are far and away the most talented. I don't think it's that close, if I'm being honest. I think St. Mary's has a tendency to muck up games, slow games down, and that's always a dangerous recipe. But when it's firing on all cylinders versus firing on all cylinders, it's not close. In my
we have
opinion.
to point out that is it Joshua Jefferson? Is that
Yes, Joshua Jefferson.
is he out for the season for St. Mary's?
Yeah, he opted for
Yeah,
surgery.
so he was a big piece to a team that didn't have much of a bench to begin with.
He is my favorite player on that team by a pretty wide margin. I've been open about it. I think it's funny. He actually has, in my opinion, a lot of Anton Watson to his game in terms of that versatile, can really guard kind of 1 through 5, great rebounder. He's not as good of a shooter, but I think he's bigger. I think he's better at really being he's more of a post, but he's only a sophomore. I really like him. I think he has Anton Watson-esque ability if he continues to work on his shot. He doesn't have as great of a feel offensively in terms of passing the ball, but part of that's because, again, this is really his first year playing. Watson is a fifth-year senior. So I do think that he is a big piece. I will not be naive to say that he doesn't matter in that game, but I also think that if you watch that game, I don't know how much a guy who averages like 10 and 4 really flips that script. So I will give credit, though. That guy can play. I'm a big fan of Joshua Jefferson.
Drew, I know you weren't very pleased with the West Coast Conference awards. I haven't even seen them yet. So please, I know you have something to say, a word or two about that.
Oh, man, Rich. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, not pleased is a bit of an understatement. I will, again, not lie. There's a bit of Zags fandom probably peeking through here. That is my team of teams. I root for them harder than any team in any sport at any level. It's funny. I know the SID for their men's basketball team, and we were together not that long ago, and we actually wrote out who we thought the all-conference team was going to be. They do 10 people, and we were actually spot on 9 of the 10. I actually put, and I know it wasn't going to happen, but I felt that for my sake as a basketball person, I actually had Joshua Jefferson as the third representative for St. Mary's. They had Saxon, Marshallonis, and this one, Aiden Mahaney. Aiden Mahaney was first team all conference over Joshua Jefferson, over Nolan Hickman, not a great showing by the WCC.
Mahaney started the year in our top 200 on our draft board, but is not there anymore.
You are not a top 200 draft board player if you play in the WCC and get the minutes and the leash that guy does and shoot under 40%. I think that's all you need to say about that. But the individual awards, and look, this is where I know I sound like a bit of a homer, but it's been since 2013 that a Gonzaga player and or coach has not won an of the year award. So that's six-man coach, player, all that. They didn't win one this year. Coach of the year went to Randy Bennett. No gripes there. Okay, totally cool. The six-man went to, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's from San Diego. His name is Deuce
Turner.
Deuce Turner, yes.
Yeah.
Deuce Turner. He was kind of in almost like a Ginobili-esque role where he played 30 minutes a game, but he did come off the bench technically. So his counting numbers were pretty good. He put up 16 a game, slashed in the mid 40s and high 30s from 3. So, okay, and Ben Gregg's role did change. Ben Gregg wasn't a bench guy by the end. So again, no real problem there. Freshman, it went to the kid from San Francisco. Why am I drawing a blank on his
Ryan
name?
Beasley.
Ryan Beasley.
I have it.
Oh yeah, I know.
Which
little guard, yeah.
Which again, I would lean towards Huff for Huff's year-long work, but Beasley was in a more consistent role in conference plays. What they look at. So again, there's an argument.
I could see, I definitely could see that. I mean, obviously Huff is the better player in the long run. You know, he's got NBA potential, but Beasley really does, contribute to that team. Yeah.
He had some great moments against. So again, no gripes. Those 2 awards or those 3 awards, I didn't have any issues with. I thought, okay, I can stand.
By the
I
way,
took
this is exciting because I haven't seen the awards, so I don't know. But I'm
I
with you
took
so far. I agree with everything you're
yeah,
saying.
I took massive issue with the biggest one I took issue with was newcomer of the year. If I asked you, Rich, who was newcomer of the year in the conference, who would you have said?
EK.
It went to Mogbo, which
Right. Well, yeah. I've been saying for quite some time I thought Player of the Year was going to go to Mogbo or Watson. Now, recent performances had me thinking Mogbo or Ike for Player of the Year. So,
I
I
so
think the reason why I would probably give the edge to Ike is because Mogbo has not really played great against the
yes,
better opponents.
I can tell you. So I did the numbers because that's what we do here against SMC slash the Zags, the 1-2. Mogbo averaged about 9.5 and 8.5, and was decently efficient, but that doesn't really get it done. And I will say this as a member of the WCC, as someone who went there for grad school, undergrad, roots for a team heavily that's in it, whether it's unfair or not, your performance against the Zags and St. Mary's, in my opinion, boils down to a large chunk of what these awards do. I
Yeah.
could care less that you beat the crap out of Pacific. Pacific and Pepperdine are about to play a tournament game in the WCC tournament, and they both just fired their head coaches. So I don't want to hear about how I had 25 and 13 against Pacific. I could go out there and probably bang a 3 against Pacific right now.
Yeah. No, you have to do good against those top teams.
Right. You have to. That's not good. And he was actively embarrassed by embarrassed. It was a man amongst a boy out there.
All right, well, we'll ease up on our guest, our former guest.
I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to call it what it was. And hey, if you got basketball eyes, you saw what I saw. The reason I
still think Jonathan has more pro potential than Ike.
I do agree.
I'm not sure that he is used properly at USF.
I also agree with that.
I think he really should play the 4, and they should have a big. So, Jonathan too. They tried to do the same thing at Missouri State, and he hated it there. And so. But yeah, I get your point. Ek has come up big against big teams, including Kentucky. So yeah, I get it. I had been thinking Mogbo all year, but the last few games changed my mind.
Now, and here's the thing: that award would not have bothered me if Augustus Marciulionis didn't win Player of the Year.
Oh well, see that's not right.
That's where I got upset.
That's not right.
That's where I got upset because I was with you. I think we actually talked about this where whichever one won player was going to get newcomer. Like that was going to be how it shook out.
Or if you split it, you're probably not upset. I mean, maybe Ek gets Player of the Year and Mobo gets.
No, that's what I'm saying. I would have been cool with that because Mogbo put up the raw numbers for sure. Absolutely. So I think Mogbo was knocked out of Player of the Year because Zags St. Mary's, but he did overall put together a good newcomer. I could have been totally cool with that. But Augustus Marciulionis winning Player of the Year was brutal to me. He's a fine player at this level, but I don't know how a guy who averages roughly 12 a game in conference play, again, I get it. Like he was a little bit better. And again, you're kind of beating up on the dregs. He averaged, I think, about 14 and 6 in conference play. But I don't know how you watch what the Zags have done since that, Santa Clara loss, really. And go, they get no of the year award. Mitchell Saxon was Defensive Player of the Year. I think that should have been Anton Watson, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think Saxon.
Yeah, I would have definitely given it to Watson.
Bad dude, he's not a bad player, but I think the Zags deserve 2. I think St. Mary's definitely deserved coach, and I think Mogbo got newcomer, and that's where my offense came into play. Is that St. Mary's wins 3 awards, including Player of the Year, which in my opinion was a travesty. I I think you can make a very strong argument. Marciulionis is the 5th, maybe 6th best player in the conference. I think there's Zags.
I mean, I could just, no, I don't even see that. You know,
What happened there?
maybe 5th.
I would say
happened there?
5th.
What's that?
Well, like what happened there? Like, because it's not a name that I've heard either of you guys bring up, and I haven't watched St. Mary's. So what's the
Well,
deal?
you know what? He was perfect for most improved if they had that award.
Bingo. Yes.
You know, he was a really good player in Europe. You know, he played some pro ball as a junior, and you know, he came over here. You know, his father played in the NBA, but his first 2 years were really disappointing. And this year, he's definitely become a steady contributor and probably their St. Mary's most effective player. But he's not the best player in the conference. I mean, that award should be going to Ike in this order. I would think Ike, Mogbo, Watson.
Yes.
And then maybe Nebhard, right? Nebhard would probably be 4th for me. Yeah.
Nemhard destroyed them in their 2 head-to-head matchups. Nemhard, it was a very blatant mismatch. It was a player. You could see that one guy played at Creighton and then had offers for transfer to Arizona and Gonzaga, and one guy was a bench guy for St. Mary's. And when they went head-to-head both times, I know that Ike had the monster game against St. Mary's. The best player on that court that night was Ryan Nemhard, though. He had 20 points, 10 assists, and 1 turnover, and shot 50% from the floor close to. So I had to calm down.
I don't know how you. I think the biggest travesty in there. Well, no, they're both travesties. You know, the player of the year and the defensive player of the year, they're bad. Those are bad.
They're bad. They're bad, and that's why like I was harsh on Mogbo because not that he didn't deserve, but it's like how do you snub so badly at the top that the one award that, in my opinion, for newcomer should have been Ike, Mogbo, Nemhard, probably the 3 I would have went in that order.
Right.
And it's like I just had a very tough time. And I go, what are we doing here, people? I mean, then you look and go, Aiden Mahaney, first team. And this is going to turn
Who
into
votes for this stuff, by the way?
I'm assuming it's coaches.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's the coaches and not the press, because I think the press would have probably given you a lot different result.
Oh, I was so confident that Ike was going to win it. I put $50 down on it because everything I've been reading, everything I'd and I stand by that. I know
why he's so mad, Zach.
Hey, I'll stand by that bet because I had somebody talking to me about how, like, well, you know, if there was 1 year you were going to, you know, not give the Zags all the love. And I was like, if you're telling me that a program finished 1 point, I mean, it was technically 1 game, but in that game, they lost by 1 point at the buzzer from tying for a conference title. And that 1 point was so big, that one game was so big that they deserve nothing. I mean, what are you doing as a conference?
Well, that sounds like jealousy to me. That sounds like pure jealousy.
You know, I had a very hard time. That's why I felt bad, like, you know, hanging on to Mogbo because, like, he was in that race. But, like, if one, like, it cannot be at the cost, in my opinion. I'm a big believer when it comes to awards, you have to do the right thing regardless of what that means. And the right thing,
unless it's an extraordinary situation like last year in Alabama.
Well, exactly. Like, when it comes to the game of basketball,
the press, you know, kind of reacted to that, you know, and you know, made Miller like second team All-American and stuff. They punished him.
They punished him. But like when you're taking just the basketball, it's like you did a disservice to the game, and that's where I get most offended. We spend so much time talking about guys, and we're not even. And I know that we do a lot, obviously, with the NBA draft, and I agree. Ike is not a high draft prospect to me. Watson, I love Watson. He's a middling, you know, he's a middling draft potential guy. He'd be a mid to late second round guy if he were to get drafted. You know, Nemhard, I think, needs to come back one more year and try to put together the way he's played the last about 2 months. He needs to put a full season together. Agreed. But we're talking about the college awards, I just don't know how you watch the tear they've been on. What Ike did against Mogbo and Saxon, what Nemhard did against Nemhard went toe-to-toe with your player of the year and, quite frankly, embarrassed him on his home court. Ike went toe-to-toe with your defensive player of the year, and I've watched every Gonzaga St. Mary's game for the last decade, probably. I don't know if I've ever seen Sax. Drew Timmy never made Saxon look that bad, in my opinion. Just in terms of physicality.
The announcers said that too. The announcers said that Ike was looking as good, if not better, than Timmy.
And like, you guys know what I think about Drew Timmy. We know how that train goes for me. So that's where I just go, don't tell me, oh, well, they only lost one game and Saxon was really good against San Diego. San Diego sucks. Don't tell me, oh, Marcellones had 11.
San Diego's so-so.
But like, I mean, think about if you dropped San Diego in the Big 12. They wouldn't win a game.
Well,
you know?
Yeah, most likely.
And I know that, but like, if you could drop Gonzaga in the Big 12, they'd be competitive.
Yeah.
Hell, if you drop Gonzaga in the Mountain West, they might be a favorite to win. And so that's where I get frustrated when it's like, and I think Zach was spot on. You unfair or fair, you have to understand that in this conference, those two teams and your performance against them that's what people are going to look at. And if we're just going to go off of, well, who had the biggest game, who scored 30 more times against Pepperdine and Pacific, then what have you done to the award? Those teams
but I mean, I think even, just raw numbers for someone wwho's totally neutral and, has just watched the season as a whole, you have to favor Mobo or Ike over Marcellones. I mean, and of course I've been saying Anton Watson was in that race as well. So, all right, we get it.
There's my soapbox.
All right, yeah. Zach is going to have to leave the show because he's leaving the country.
Yeah.
Zach, I'm glad your internship lasts till 2030 because you're leaving us for a while. Where are you headed?
Going to Gold Coast, Australia for a USF thing. It's actually like a sports immersion program, so it should be cool.
So will you be talking to any guys? Will you be talking to any guys in the NBL?
So I think we're going to an NBL game this next week.
But will you talk to any of the coaches or executives or?
I think I don't know if we're going to talk to any of the coaches or executives. I think we might be talking to one of the operations people for one of the teams, or maybe that might be the arena. But we're definitely going to a game. The first game we're going to is an AFL game, so an Australian Football League game. So
I've never been to one of those. That sounds fun though. I've always wanted to go to Australia. You probably
no pads. I looked it up today. And
wow. I know Hugh Baxter used to be on the show, Australian native, used to love Australian football. So here's what you got to do, Zach. If there's any chance we can get an interview with a young NBL player, there's a lot of prospects. I could even send you a list of the prospects over there. If there's any chance you can get a Hoops prospects interview lined up for us, we will love you. But
I'll let you know. I mean, we're going to.
We love you already, Zach. Don't worry. You don't have to get an interview. We still love you.
Do my best. I'll do my best.
And
if there's any in the Gold Coast, man, I mean, I'll have some time. So I'll do my best.
You know what I'll do? I will send you a list. I'll email you a list. Is your San Francisco email, does that work?
Yeah, that works.
All right. I'll email all the guys in the NBL we're looking at.
Cool.
All right, Zach, we'll have a good time and we'll say goodbye for now.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Trip, Zach.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you guys.
So while Zach was in San Francisco watching the Zags and the Dons, and Drew was pulling his hair out watching the award announcements in the WCC, I was at Princeton and Cornell in a battle for first place. Now, at the time, Yale, Cornell, and Princeton were all in a three-way tie for the Ivy League title. However, Princeton held the tiebreaker over Yale. Do you know what the conference tiebreaker is in the Ivy?
Highest GPA. Highest team GPA. No, I actually don't.
It should be. That's a great one. It's highest net ranking in the net rankings. So
that's interesting.
Well, Princeton has played a much tougher schedule than either of the other two, so their net is much higher. They also have only lost 3 games on the season, which is less than Yale or Cornell. Anyway, it's a full house. I was on press row. If I wanted to, I could have reached out and touched the players, which I only did a couple times. No, I didn't. But anyway, NBA scouts were there on the opposite end of press row. And it was a great game. Caden Pierce came up big for Princeton. And so now Princeton, in theory, because of the tiebreaker, has sole possession of first place. So all they have to do is beat Penn tomorrow, and then they will be the top seed in the Ivy. The Ivy also does something else interesting, is they basically cut the conference in half, and only 4 teams play. So they have a Final Four, and I just received today in the mail credentials to go see that. Now, I also have credentials for the Big East tournament, but I wasn't going to stay for the finals because I wanted to actually watch some of the other action around the country. So I was going to come home on Saturday and watch the Big East finals on TV. And luckily, the Final Four for the Ivy League begins in the morning, 11 in the morning. So on my way home, I can go over to Columbia, and about 6 miles away from Madison Square Garden, though probably take about 2 hours by car. I think I'll take the subway, and I'll hit that on the way home. So the last thing in the notebook before we close it up is injuries. Now, we haven't done a regular episode in about 3 weeks because of the interview episodes. So we're going to go over some news, which you may or may not know. One is Olivia Kamwa of Michigan, who's pretty much out of the picture. They've been playing pretty badly, is out for the season with a wrist injury. Now, he's a fifth-year guy, so this is it. His season's over. He's on to the NBA draft. He's been around 100 on our draft board, kind of flipping back and forth between the top 100 and top 200. We shall see. Very athletic, good defender. Needs some seasoning on the offensive end. The other big injury player that was lost for the year was Joseph Tugler, the very impressive freshman forward for Houston. So what, actually, you put that with the Terrence Arsenault injury, who's already out for the season. They also lost seldom used guard Rondell Walker, who actually was a top 100 recruit. So now they've lost 3 bench pieces. So really, when you look at Houston, everyone talks about Kansas's depth. Houston doesn't have much more depth. They really don't. They can't afford to lose anybody else, and they only go maybe 8 deep. And so, and if you've noticed lately, I think you probably have, Drew, that Houston's hasn't been dominating people, and they've given up a lot of points in their last few games, even to Oklahoma, who's not the best offensive team in the world. Any comments on those 2 key injuries?
Yeah, I mean, I think don't really need to touch on Michigan. Like you said, they've as a unit just underperformed, and they just haven't been the Michigan Wolverines that we're used to seeing for a while now. So they've got a whole bunch of things they've got to right over there. But I mean, with Houston, definitely worried. I mean, we talk about them. Normally our concern with them around this time of the year is, are they going to be able to generate enough offense to match the defense? And are they going to be able to do that, for the next, in a March, obviously like 6 games, but even through conference tournament play? Now the question becomes, are they going to have the bodies to withstand just the bumps and bruises that come with such a high intensity style of play? And I mean, just a fatigue standpoint, I mean, these are a team, like you said, they weren't the deepest team. They lost Arsenal a while ago. I wouldn't say that they were shallow by any stretch, but now they definitely are trending that way. And I mean, I thought Tugler was really impressive and like the perfect Houston player as a freshman. I mean, averaging right over a block a game, right around a steal a game, 6'7", 230, like just totally fits that system, and just the perfect guy to play those, 12 to 15, 16 minutes a night and come in and just give them kind of an injection of energy and athleticism and size. And now that's gone.
Yeah, I think he's much more athletic and bouncy than their other 2 big.
Absolutely. And the numbers weren't bad. He was averaging about 4 and 4. I mean, that's solid impact for a freshman.
And he also,
team.
He came up some big block shots, big rebounds, sometimes a key time.
Absolutely. So I just worry now because their style of play is so demanding that the question becomes like, obviously the offensive concerns have been there ever since this kind of Houston revival over the last couple of years. And now you go, man, are they going to be able to play that level of defense when these guys are having to play now 35,
36 minutes a night and have to play with that intensity and still have to try to manufacture points. And I think that might be a bit of a reason we're seeing them, I don't want to say struggling. Look, they came into the Big 12 after kind of having a similar Gonzaga situation. Goes, oh, you're not really playing in a super, super tough conference and won the thing, or a guaranteed
Very
share
similar.
of it.
I think it's a very similar situation.
And so I give them all the credit. They're still super dangerous. They're well coached. They compete. They have a backcourt duo that at any time can take over a game. But I just worry now as they get into a situation where every game's gonna get harder and harder, and you lose home court, and the days of rest get a little bit lesser. And I just am curious to see, are they going to be conditioned enough physically and mentally to be able to go through that toll, knowing that it's basically going to be a 6-7 man show at most, all the way in theory to a title run.
Right. All right. So moving on with the other key injuries around the NCAA Division I, I'm going to start off with lottery potential pick Cody Williams, who's missed a crap load of games. By the way, I think Colorado, when you look at all their injuries this year, I don't know if it was the nation or the Pac-12, but they said in last night's game between Oregon and Colorado that Oregon by far had the most minutes missed by players. And then second was Colorado. Now, I don't know if they were talking about the Pac-12 or the country, but I would certainly believe that Oregon led the country in most minutes lost, and I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado was right there. And, with a guy like Cody Williams, who really hasn't done a lot. He's, he started off really slow, then he came on really good, and some people even moved him to number 1 on their draft board. He's always been around mid-lottery for me. But now I'm starting to wonder, this time it's an ankle. Is this guy just thinking he's a one and done and just kind of not taking any chances whatsoever? Colorado's on the bubble, but this could be, I think Colorado could be a Sweet 16 team if they're healthy and hitting on all cylinders.
They came into the season top 20 for sure, top 20
No,
in the AP.
it was actually they weren't voted there, but after a week or two they moved.
Very early into the year.
Yeah, very early, and so you start to wonder, and I'm sure I'm not the only person starting to wonder, how hurt is this guy? Because it seems like anytime something happens, which reminds me of Kevin Porter. I don't want to. Cody Williams has certainly not acted like Kevin Porter did. Which that's a whole nother story. But Kevin Porter, anytime he had a hangnail, he sat out the game. So yeah, on this note, I can't really comment further other than Colorado, is on the bubble and they need him. But I wanted to ask you do you think there's a possibility that colleges now, now that they kind of have more power, now that they can pay the players, do you think they're going to say, we don't want one and dones anymore? If you're coming here and we're going to give you money, you got to at least stay 2 years.
Yeah, I think you're already seeing a shift in that way, at least in terms of what coaches want to do. I know and I know you're asking about the club, but coaches, we're seeing a shift towards the transfer portal. Now, I know some of that is because those COVID, we're still at the very tail end of those COVID guys. So you've got fit and 6-year players that have
which will end next year. So next year, you're still going to have a lot of 25-year-old. But after that, it's going to be back to normal.
But I think you're kind of seeing the coaches going, look, I don't really care about your NBA prospects and what you want to do, whether it's overseas or in the league. I'm trying to win in Colorado, wherever they're at. And so I think we're already seeing coaches start leaning towards the, I might try to bring in a freshman, maybe 2 highly touted guys, but try to fill in the rest of the roster with transfers. Obviously you have the Calipari's and the Dukes that when you're signing 5 top 30 guys, you're going to stick to that model. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if colleges are like, we're making these investments in kids. And I know there's been talk about like, do we start viewing these kids as employees? Like, and conversations like that. If you start viewing college athletes in that light, then absolutely, I think colleges are going to expect, if not at least 2 years, almost like hey, you got to play a certain number of games, barring a medical condition or like, an excusable absence.
Yeah, I think 2 years is the way to go. If we're going to invest, if we're going to invest in you, train you, we want to make sure you're there. And I think with Cody Williams and Isaiah Collier, there's been some doubt about whether they're all in. Now, Cody,
we've seen this years ago. We saw this with Ben
my God,
Simmons.
we've seen it a
Like,
lot
for
worse.
years, like,
We've
for
seen
years.
it a lot
Yeah.
worse in other years.
Absolutely.
And then you have the kids like Stephon Castle of Connecticut, who's totally bought into being a role player, even though he's supposed to be a one and done. And you have Jacoby Walter, who hasn't missed a game, and he's given it his all.
Filipowski came back.
Filipowski came back. Well, you know what, though? Filipowski was hurt. We didn't know that at the time. So,
yeah, but still, like, I still think if he had said, I'm going, I'm out, I still think things would have probably worked out. Now, I get why he didn't, because he probably thought he could launch himself higher up boards. But I mean, he came back. That's still not common. It's not every day that the best freshman at Duke, like arguably the best player at Duke and the best freshman, comes back for a year or two. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I don't know if they'd go that drastic that quickly, because I don't think college at all has any idea how this NIL thing still works, at least how it's going to, that relationship works. But I wouldn't be shocked to see them transition almost into like a contract type situation. Like, hey, these deals are here for you, but you got to sign on for 2 years, or you got to sign on to, play X amount of games, barring, a medical injury or, an excusable absence. So I wouldn't be shocked if that happens, because you're tossing kids hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're bringing in a class of freshmen where it might be talking millions of dollars in total, they probably want to win and have you be somewhat ingrained in the community. Because I think that's, a big part of it too, is like, do these guys leave and still view themselves as members of whatever school they came from? I think there's schools that do a really good job of that, and schools that kind of don't. They just kind of pump you out and you never really think about that place again. It was a one and done shop. So it'd be interesting to see.
All righty. Moving on with further injuries, and I'm gonna ask, stay with me, Drew, because I'm gonna ask you, because I know you looked into these injuries a little more than I have. Kevin McCullough tweaked his knee that had kept him out for like 3 straight games in the win, Kansas's win over K-State, and Dylan Dessou did the same in Texas's loss to Baylor. By the way, if Dylan Dessou doesn't get hurt in that game, Texas beats Baylor at Baylor.
Yes.
They had that game in control.
They've actually given us 2 great games this year.
What's that?
The Baylor Texas matchup.
Oh yeah. Well, Texas is fun to watch no matter what, and so is Baylor pretty much. But I just felt bad for Texas. I felt bad for Dessou because he's had injury issues in the past. And I'll tell you what, when he first left the court, I thought he was done.
I did too.
You have better news for us. So talk about McCullough and Dessou.
Yeah, so McCullough, I know that he's kind of the big one. I mean, we talk about depth, and this Kansas team is the poster child for top-heavy, kind of riding your horses, as far as you can go. So McCullough obviously injured. I believe it was a bone bruise, kind of knee issue. Comes back, and now the report is that he's tweaked it again. And the thing that's interesting is, reading into it a little bit more and all the local outlets, there's the debate that they're now having is, do we sit him for obviously the remainder of league play the conference?
Oh, and the conference tournament.
And the conference tournament.
Woo!
So one of the quotes I was reading here was, let's see here. Let's see how he does this weekend. Let's see how he feels next week. But doing well in the Big 12 tournament isn't as important as him being healthy the next week. I believe that's from Coach Self. So next week that they probably won't have to, after Saturday's game at Houston, they probably won't have to play again till Wednesday or Thursday, probably Thursday. Right.
So he'd have like almost 10 days off if he doesn't play on Saturday.
Yeah. But we'll see what that discourse is, because I mean it's.
But there is discussion that he might not even play in the conference tournament.
That was the quote from himself, but now people are saying, it raises a lot of the things are saying it raises the question of will he, and maybe it's he doesn't play in round 1. I don't want to go as far as say he doesn't play at all. Like you said, if he gets that 10-day rest, it could be, hey, we rest him the first matchup. Should have enough in the tank to get through. But obviously with the Big 12 being so loaded, if you expect to make a run in that conference's tournament.
Yeah, because they're going to be matched up against somebody like Texas Tech or
yeah. And I mean, you're looking at Texas Tech, and you could be in a championship game where you're facing a Houston, a Baylor, an Iowa State, however that bracket ends up looking like. So I don't think he'd miss the whole tournament, but I wouldn't be shocked. He's probably not playing against Houston, is what it sounds like, and it wouldn't shock me if they decide if their first round draw they feel is favorable, maybe give him even one extra day. But it seems like he avoided anything serious, and it very clearly sounds like their focus is going to be on the round of 64. That's what they're most locked in on. And then for Dylan Dessou, I agree with you. When I saw it happen, I was pretty worried that might be it's over for him kind of injury. They seem pretty positive. All the reports that he still is questionable for Saturday, but Dylan himself has come out and said that he feels good, that he hopes to play. Obviously, he said in the quote, but I have to talk with the coaches and the trainers and go through that whole process. So definitely not done for the year, it sounds like. The question is with Texas, they're going to need him if they want to make any kind of noise in their respective conference tournament, and then potentially obviously down the road. So it could be a situation where he sits this Saturday, but is then back after that. But definitely sounds like he avoided a serious one, which is good because this Texas team.
I don't even know if they can afford to sit him this Saturday if he can play, because they're facing Oklahoma, and they're like those two teams might be battling for the last spot to get in from the Big 12.
For sure. This Texas team is terrible. I would not want to see this team. I think we've said this a lot, Rich, this year. Like, they fluctuated from being in the polls to being out of the polls to some big wins, some tight losses. But they're a talented team, man. I wouldn't want to see them.
Yeah, I really like that team.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, even without Dessou, they're still pretty formidable, but he is their main offensive.
Yeah, he's a big engine. He's like the engine.
Right, yeah, because he could score inside and out and mid-range. I love Dylan Dessou.
I'm glad that he is healthy and that it looks like we'll make a return. It just depends on does he wrap up the season and then in conference play, or is it he's not back until conference play. But I mean, I know he suffered injury last year, and when I saw it, I was just like, oh man, here we go again. Like, this sucks, for a guy who's been kind of the heart and soul of this Texas team, recently, and is a hell of a player. You never want to see a guy like that go down back-to-back years, especially at this time of the year.
Right. All right, so moving on, we have Tyler Kolek, who's missed the past 2 games for Marquette with an oblique strain. He is not going to play this weekend, and they're saving him for the Big East tournament. He'll be reevaluated at the Big East tournament. My guess is Tyler Kolek, knowing him, will play, but, Marquette's in the tournament no matter what. Maybe, for example, like you said, maybe he sits out the first round, the first game Marquette plays, because they still have enough to probably win that game. Where they're going to need Kolek is when they face a Creighton or when they face a Connecticut. But I think otherwise they can win. So we shall see. Other injuries, and most of these guys are questionable. Victor Lankinen, the center for Cincinnati, he's questionable for this weekend. Caleb Foster, actually the freshman combo guard for Duke, looks like he's going to be out for a while with a foot injury. He's not expected to play against North Carolina. Dedan Thomas, the electric freshman point guard for UNLV, is questionable. They have a big game this weekend because they're on the bubble. Rylan Griffin looked like he got hurt pretty bad in the game against Tennessee. Apparently it's not so bad. He's questionable for this weekend with a calf injury. Dalen Swain of Xavier will probably miss the rest of the season. This is the 4th or 5th guy that I know of that has Xavier has lost for the season. They've also played the hardest schedule in the country.
Doesn't surprise me. They've had some. It doesn't surprise me.
Talk about a talented team that just has no luck. I mean, Texas falls into that category, but Xavier certainly does for me. I don't see Xavier. They're saying most likely for the rest of the season without Swain, another freshman, by the way, and very impressive one. Without Swain, I do not think they have enough to maybe even win a game. They're most likely going to face Butler in the first round of the Big East. They just lost to Butler last night. Yeah. I just can't see them doing much. All right, now we have another player's questionable, and that's another freshman, by the way, and another very impressive freshman at that. Miles Rice of Washington State. He injured his shoulder last night against Washington. And what's interesting about him is he is a 21-year-old freshman because he missed his first couple years getting cancer treatment.
Yep.
So it's a great story to go along with that great story of Washington State. But he may not be available this weekend. And you have an update about what Washington State's main rival.
Yeah, so I mean, Washington State drops a game to Washington.
Rice, I guess, left the game early. And
He left the game early. He
Right.
did play. I didn't really watch the game too
I
closely.
know he didn't have a good game.
Yeah, but I don't think he had much of a chance to do anything, and then he goes down to injury. So, big win for Washington, but I guess not big enough because Mike Hopkins, coach since was that 2016, 2017, something like that, was apparently just let go today. Looks like reports saying that they parted ways, and
That's
I'm not really surprised.
The timing is crazy.
The timing is wild, but I'm not surprised. I mean, if you look outside of that one year when they won the Pac as the regular season champions, and that was a while ago, that was pre-COVID, or I think the year before COVID, if I'm not mistaken. He's made one NCAA tournament appearance, lost in the second round, and his record is. So yeah, he joined in 2017-18 was his first year. So he went 21-13, 27-9, and then from just downhill, 15-17, 5-21, 17-15, and then right now I think they're like 16-16 or so. I think they're like 500.
But they've had
on the
some good
season.
wins this year. But
They have. I mean, they beat my
Gonzaga,
Zags
Washington
early.
State. Did they beat Arizona?
I don't think they beat Arizona.
Okay.
I know Washington State did. I think
Yeah,
once,
right. But here's go ahead.
I mean, I think it's one of those ones where the point I was going to, this team's interesting to me because they're super heavy on veteran players.
Yeah.
And every single guy except Corin Johnson, the sophomore guard, I'm not saying transferred this year, but is a transfer that he had brought in at some point.
Right.
Keon Brooks came from Kentucky. Wheeler came from Kentucky.
Kep Nang came from St. Louis.
Kevin came from Oregon.
Did he?
I think he came from Oregon, if I'm not
Maybe
mistaken.
he started at St. Louis.
Yeah, I think he might have been like a 3-time, but he definitely came from Oregon. Mulcahy came from Rutgers, and then Wood, the shooter, came from Portland. So I wonder if there was just some, I had heard just kind of through the grapevine that when they brought in Wheeler and they brought in Mulcahy, that they were opening up and they were trying to do the basketball thing and really get the NIL going. And I mean, like I said, outside of Johnson, this entire the top 5 of their 6 players are all transfers to some, whether they came in this year or the year before, still weren't getting it done. So I wonder if there was just maybe they thought that, hey, you're not winning. We're giving you the resources to make some moves. They actually secured Zoom Diallo, who was a 4, right on the board of a 5-star, top 5 point guard prospect in the country, high on the list for my Zags. And a big thing with him is they said NIL was a big contributor there, just on reports and rumors I had been hearing. No confirmation on that. But, hey, we're opening up kind of the treasure trove for you. You're bringing in guys, and you're getting guys from legitimate programs. I mean, you're getting guys from Oregon, you're getting guys from Kentucky, from Rutgers. You're not getting just castaways, and you're still not winning. I wonder if they just were like, look, if we're going to go down this route of spending all this money and really going to the NIL thing, we need a coach who's going to capitalize on that and win with it. And, he really hasn't. I mean, like I said, all of those guys, with the exception of Johnson, are seniors. And I think most of them, are 5th-year seniors. I think Brooks, right, Wheeler, and Mulcahy are for sure 5th year. And I'm not sure about Kepner. He might be a 4.
Right. Well, he might, yeah. He might get a red shirt because he hardly played this year and he's out for the season. Also, they redshirted their 4-star freshman wing coming in. Don't ask me his name. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but he was a 4-star guy, top 50 guy. What I find weird is the timing. To me, the Pac-12 tournament is wide open. If Arizona falters somewhere along the line, anybody could win that Pac-12.
Anybody could win that thing. I 100% agree.
Why not wait till the Pac-12, the end of the Pac-12 tournament? But they must have had their reasons. Here's the other funny part of this is last year on this show, I was saying Hopkins has to go. This zone, this constant playing zone is just ridiculous. nobody wants to do it. Nobody, wants to play in that type of system, and it doesn't work anymore. And you know what? This year he came out and he had ditched the zone. He must have been a listener of the show. But he didn't get fired when I thought he would. And he actually changed his style totally. I predicted Washington was going to be like the 5th team in from the Pac-12 this year. So they've been a big disappointment for me.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, you look at that roster and there's name talent, there's name brand talent, there's transfer talent, they're veteran. Like they have a coach that's been there now for a more than over a recruiting cycle. So it's not like he's he's been there for 7 years, 7 seasons now. Like I said, all of their 6 best players are all 5th-year seniors and 1 sophomore, basically. So it's like in a Pac-12 that is super down with an Arizona team that we've seen do the usual, roller coaster, and they're under 500 in conference play and 500 on season play. And it's like right now, if they were to play Gonzaga right now, they lose that game.
Oh yeah.
The way that one team's playing, one team's going. And I think if you go back at some of their other impressive wins, like if Miles Rice is healthy, it was a close game. If he's healthy, doesn't get hurt, I'm not taking anything away from Washington getting the win, but I think if he's fully good to go, that game might flip. That was a close battle. And you could argue that their best player was out, or one of the best players for Washington State was out. So.
Yeah, Miles Rice was probably, if he's not, I don't want to call him their best player, but you probably want to call him their most important player.
Sure, valid point. So yeah,
but I also think he's probably their best player. So let's move on to the rest of the injuries, and we'll close out the notebook. We have this is funny actually. Tristan Anara, who if you're Kansas fans or Big 12 fans, you remember him at Kansas. He transferred to Cleveland State, and we're actually going to talk about him a little bit later in the show. But last night he didn't play for unknown reasons, and we don't know if he's playing tonight because the Horizon tournament is ongoing. But Cleveland State played 2nd seed or 1st seed Youngstown and beat them without their best player.
Yep, 2nd seed Youngstown.
So we're not sure if he's playing. We're not sure what's wrong with him, but we know he didn't play last night. 2 more injury, or actually 1 more injury. I'm sorry. Javion McCullum, leading scorer for Oklahoma. He is questionable for Saturday's game versus Texas. So there you go. Now we'll move on to bracketology. I forgot we have bracketology to get through in the notebook. And my latest analysis, which I wouldn't certainly consider myself an expert like Lenardi. However, the way I see it, 33 teams are safely in the tournament, plus 17 one-bid conferences. So that gives us a total of 50. I also have 4 so-called one-bid conferences that I think have an outside chance to perhaps produce 2 teams, and I will talk about them. So now we're up to 54. That leaves 14 spots, and I have 31 bubble teams. So my question to you, Drew, is out of those 31 bubble teams, which one because basically 17 of these teams in green, what we have in green, are not going to be in the tournament. So I guess I want to ask you is, what are your thoughts on those green teams? Like, is there anybody you think should definitely be in? You can't even believe they're on the bubble, or is the team you think is definitely out? They're just, or what have you, whatever kind of comments you'd like to make about this, because basically the green field we're going to lose more than half of them.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this team already. We have Texas in green. I like this Texas team. If Dylan Dessou is healthy and this proves to be just a 1 game or no game absence, again, he's not even listed as out. He's questionable. This Texas team would be one of those scary seeds that can get in there and easily win a game or 2. And then once you start getting into that Sweet 16 range, anything can happen. Who else? Let's see here. I'm looking at some of the smaller teams. I know James Madison started the year kind of on that, like, that was kind of the early season Cinderella. A lot of people really high on them. I still think they're a good team. I still think they got a chance to potentially go on a little bit of a run. I haven't seen them play recently. I watched them a lot more early in the year just because they were kind of the hot commodity at the time.
Right.
I also like Grand Canyon out of the WAC. I have seen them play a couple of times just because they kind of play a circuit out here. And I think they're a really solid team. In terms of teams I'm not really like high on, I'm kind of just like over. I know we just talked about Colorado. I think the talent's there. I just don't know, like resume wise, if they don't really make any noise in the conference tournament. I think they're definitely on the bubble, but I don't know. I haven't been super impressed, but part of that's, I think, because every time I try to watch them, there's always somebody out, whether it's De Silva or whoever, they're just not playing. So I think they could be dangerous. Who else do we have? The ACC ones are interesting. I think Wake Forest has been a really fun kind of team this year, but I just feel like they haven't been like get over
they're
that.
like Florida was. They're like Florida was
Yes.
a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. Like they'll get a big win and then a letdown, or they'll get in a close game and you're like, man, they look good, but
they're
lost.
just not good at closing.
Yeah, and so I don't.
How about Virginia? How about Virginia?
Well,
they can't break 50 points. I'd like to see Virginia play Pacific in the NIT.
Oh God, Richard, it might be 20-10 by the end of the game. I didn't even see them on here. I'm out on Virginia. Again, we always kind of harp on those teams with the Rick Barnes soul box joke and the Houston. Do they have enough offense? Virginia literally does not have any offense, and they still, to me, aren't the Virginia defense.
Well, the funny part about Virginia is they have a bunch of shooters, young shooters, beside Beekman and Ryan Dunn. They have the last two recruiting classes have been all these guys who were brought in from shooters. And they still can't score. One of the problems is they haven't had a dominating big in quite some time, or just a steady big. Just a steady big.
They haven't had any steady big since they won the national tournament.
They could get you like 14-8 every night. If they had a guy like Jalen Ledee or somebody like that, they'd probably be like 10 times better than they are. But
because they can play to their style of play now. Like
right, right now they have nothing. There's nothing about that team that prevents you from chasing them off the 3-point line.
Exactly. Like if you're going to play that slow, grind it out, if that's the kind of game you like to play, is you have to have the ability to control the boards, and you have to have the ability to dump the ball down for an easy 2 every once in a while and just force the other team to adapt to that. And then obviously, if you said kick out, like you said, if I run you off the 3-point line, what are you going to do? Like look at BYU as a prime example. If you run them off the line, they still have Fushayori who can do some damage down on the block. Right. So if the shooters aren't hitting, or you really close out on them and you let them play one-on-one, Fushayori can go get you 18 and 8. He can go get you 14 and 10, and you're like, oh crap, we can't really just do that. Virginia doesn't have that. And then the 2 conferences that I think they're mid-majors that I really think are going to be fun. Spoiler, I watched the Dayton game. Won't give any spoilers on the scores, but I just watched the Dayton VCU
Oh, it's
game.
not on our picks. It's not on our picks of the week. So.
Oh, okay, good. Because I was going to say take it off.
No, we're only doing Saturday and Sunday's games. So.
But I think the Mountain West.
You can spoil it if you want.
Went to overtime. Dayton holds on and comes back after being down 17
was big
to win.
VCU was
Kobe Brea really helped drag him back into that game. He started shooting the hell out of the
Brea,
ball.
friend of the show, one of my favorite interviews of all time.
Yeah, the Dayton guys are always good interviews. I love the Duran interview we did 2 years ago. It was great. Kobe, you guys spoke highly of Kobe, so a lot of love for Dayton. But I think the A10 and the Mountain West are going to be fun conferences. I think Dayton and San Diego State are my favorites to win them. Those are the 2 teams that I would take. But I legitimately think in the Mountain West, I think there's 4 teams that at any could make a run at it and win the damn thing. And I think the A10 has a handful of teams that could. Richmond's been really. I didn't think Richmond would be nearly as good as they are with Burton leaving. VCU just gave Dayton a game and showed that when they're on, they can beat anybody in that conference. So I think those 2 conferences, I have my favorites, which I think are probably the general consensus favorites based on where they are in the polls. But I think those are the ones where if San Diego State and Dayton lose, I think there's 3 or 4 teams in those conferences that could totally get in there and steal that auto bid, with San Diego State and Dayton already kind of locking themselves into the field already. So those are 2 that should be really fun and really chaotic, I think.
Right. The conference I think is going to be most interesting coming, from this weekend all the way to next weekend. It's going to be the Big East. I mean, we know Connecticut, Creighton, and Marquette are 3 of the best teams in the country. But then St. John's, Villanova, Providence, and Seton Hall has the best record of those teams, but they also have the easiest schedule, and especially non-conference schedule. So on any given night, it's kind of like the Mountain West. When any of those teams, St. John's, Villanova, Providence, Seton Hall play, you have no idea who's going to win.
I might not have picked any of those games right this year in our pick. I was like, I might look back and realize like when those 4 teams have played, I don't know if I picked any of their games right.
So
Like,
I guess my point is I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how the Big East tournament plays out, that the Big East only gets 4 teams. I think they're going to get
Yeah.
5, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get 4. And I'll tell you what, if it's to make room for a team like Grand Canyon or James Madison or Appalachian State or Princeton or Indiana State or Drake, I am absolutely fine with it, because to me, the 4 one bid conferences that I think deserve possibly 2 bids, and I'll just go right down the line. I'm going to start with 23-3 Princeton, who I just saw play personally. That team has 2 pro prospects on it to me. And a lot of other good players who could play at high level, at high level conference play. So to me, if Princeton doesn't win the Ivy League tournament, I think they're still deserving of consideration. Same thing goes with Indiana State and Drake. The chances are they're going to meet in the Missouri Valley Conference Finals, and one team's going to think they're out, and one team's obviously going to be in. But man, I think those 2 teams are good enough to be considered. And I much rather watch Indiana State than watch St. John's or Seton Hall or Villanova. This is coming from a Villanova fan. I just find those teams, I don't know, they're just kind of a train wreck at times. And, they've had their chances. We know they're not the best team in the country. And we know they're not going to get near the Final Four. Why not give a team like Indiana State, who's only lost 5 games on the season, a shot? The other 2 conferences I would mention are out west. And that would be, Grand Canyon, as you mentioned, and McNeese State. Oh, no, wait, there's another one. There's James Madison and Appalachian State in the Sun. So actually I have 5 teams or 5 conferences that I think, maybe could get a second bid. Now, here's what I'm going to say. Having seen all these teams, Grand Canyon has a legitimate win, at least one win. I forget who they beat, at least one legitimate win this year. And looking over the roster, they have talent. We're going to interview a pro prospect on their team today. Okay. James Madison and Appalachian State both have big wins. Appalachian State won at Auburn. They won at Auburn. And these teams, can match up with pretty much anybody. I will say McNeese, their conference is really weak. So if they don't get in, they should win their conference. So I get it if they are left out, but those other teams I mentioned, I really think deserve a look over the 6th best team in the Big East, or the 6th best team in the Big Ten, or the 10th best team in the Big 12.
Yeah, Grand Canyon earlier this year beat both USF and San Diego State.
That was the game.
So those are probably their 2 best wins.
Yeah.
Outside of conference, if you had to look, those are their 2 best wins.
James Madison beat Michigan State at 3rd place, and everyone's saying, Michigan State's a lock to get in. What? Michigan State's a lock to get in? What are you talking about?
I mean, I was much higher. I was much more forgiving of that team very early in the year. I remember doing the episode when I think it was Caleb kind of tore into Izzo a little bit.
Yeah.
And I still think I still think they're a dangerous team. I wouldn't want to see them.
I don't think they are what we thought they were.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely. I think coming into this, I think a lot of people had them in an Elite 8, if not even maybe.
Wait, when you look at our
4.
preseason predictions on the website, most of us had them in the Final Four.
Yeah. So that was a team.
Actually, I think Caleb had him winning it all.
Oh, all right. Maybe that's why he was so mad at Izzo, because he really tore into Izzo that day. But it's still a team I wouldn't want to see. But yeah, I think there's an element, and that's one of the things that makes the tournament so fun is that these teams that like nobody talks about, and I've been busy, so I haven't gotten to watch a lot of. I've seen like Grand Canyon because again they're out my way, so I've seen them work. I watched them play USF, I watched them play San Diego State, and I was impressed. I'm like, this is a good team. Do I think they're gonna go, take UConn and take UConn down? No, I won't. I wouldn't take them in that game, but like they're 26-4, and I've always made this argument for my Zags. When a team does what they're supposed to do, there's a level of that being impressive. If they're supposed to be the best team in that conference, be the best team in that conference and go smoke everybody. And that's what they've done. I mean, one of those losses with South Carolina early in the year, and then since then they've lost 3 games in conference play. Really, like tip of the cap where it's due.
Right. So now, actually, this interview took place a couple days ago. So we're not literally bringing him on right at this moment, but we talked to Tyon Grant-Foster, the star of Grand Canyon this year, which is kind of amazing because they already have their 2 leading scores from 2023 and 2022 are still on the team. And then they added, Tyon. And so now the 3 leading scorers for the past 3 years are all on the same team. This team is for real. And we'll roll that interview right now. Our special guest today is Grand Canyon's Tyon Grant-Foster, a Player of the Year candidate in the Western Athletic Conference. Tyon currently leads the WAC in scoring at 19.4 points per game, also leads in player efficiency rating, win shares, and plus minus. The 6'7" wing also ranks in the top 10 of the conference for steals per game at 1.6, blocks per game at 1.3, field goal percentage at 44.6, free throw percentage at 78.2, offensive rating and defensive rating. Welcome to the show, Tyon. How you doing?
I can hear you now.
Did you hear my great introduction?
Yeah, I heard it.
A lot of numbers there. So welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I am good. So I first heard about you in 2019 when you were playing for Indian Hills. And I believe that year, coming out of Indian Hills, that you were the #1 ranked JUCO transfer. And then you joined Kansas in 2020. You had a solid season for the Jayhawks as a junior. And then your story became complicated. And I'm sure you've told this story more times than you can count at this point. But if you don't mind, could you please let our listeners know, what happened between 2021 after Kansas to up to the beginning of this season?
It was like I had an accident, and the accident that occurred was I had a cardiac arrest, and I was rushed to the hospital mid-game versus Coppin State when I was at DePaul. And for the next 16 months after that day, I was just I was still in school, but I was just going through doctor's appointments and trying to see what happened and figure out a way to stop it from happening so I could get my return to the court. And last year, it'll be a year, March 29th this month, that I was back playing basketball again. And today I got cleared was March 29th of 2023. So that was one of the greatest moments of my life that day.
So was it a thing like Keontae Johnson? Like he had myocarditis and collapsed on the court? Was it something like that?
Yeah, it was something similar. I don't fully know the extent of everything that he went through, but I know it was something similar.
Okay. And now there's no risk of you, they say you're 100% healthy back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, after you go through something like that, it's like you're never normal again. You're different just because of like that. So not a lot of people go through that situation. So I just feel you're never normal. But as far as the basketball standpoint, yeah, like everything's back to normal. I'm good. I mean, if it wasn't, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be playing like 38 minutes in certain games. So.
Right. Yeah. It is amazing how many, and maybe it happened before and we just didn't hear about it. But I mean, you think of Bronny and you think of his teammate Vince Iwachukwu, and then Keontae Johnson and yourself, all had heart issues. It's and of course, back in the past, there was Hank Gathers, which shocked us all, but that was probably before you were born. Yeah, heart stuff is nothing to mess around with. My wife has a heart issue, so yeah, I'm familiar with how scary it could be. Not for myself, but for her. So what was when you fully got cleared? Had you chosen Grand Canyon at that point?
No, I was literally, I got cleared and I put my name in the portal, and the schools had started hitting me up, and Grand Canyon was one of the schools that had been talked about in my friend group, just because one of my close friends went to ACU, Damian Daniels. He went to ACU and he played against them, and then he had just hit me like, dude, that's a great school to go play for and everything. And then Coach Walk had reached out and everything, and it was just like, should we set up a visit? Then when I got here, it was just like all love and everything, and just the belief and faith that they had in me made it easy for me to make this decision to come here and play this year.
Right. And so what exactly, specifically, what did you like about the program? I mean, was there anything that, like, was it Coach Drew or the other coaches, or the fact that they had a really good team from the previous year, or maybe it was the location? What kind of things that that were part of that decision-making process?
I mean, it was a lot of factors that played into it. Just the location, Coach Walker being here, Coach Drew and his past with heart issues, and literally my cousin Ish, he just signed back with the Suns. He was here too, so it was just a whole lot of factors that really played into me coming down here. And but the main thing I would say would be that the team that they had, the team was good, and I knew that if I came here, that we could have a wonderful season just with the pieces that they were bringing back and everything. So that was really one of the main things.
Right. And so here, this is an interesting thing. In each of the last 3 seasons, the team has been led in scoring by a different player. So back in 2021, it was Javon Blackshear at 16 points per game. Last season was Ray Harrison, 18 points per game. And now this season at almost 20 points per game. Point being, and also Gabe McLaughlin, the forward, he was averaging 13 points per game last year. So when you joined a team like that, did you expect to have this type of impact with all those, all those guys that could fill it up already here?
I would just say that, I mean, I came here to help the team win. So, like, the impact, if it was scoring, rebounding, passing, defending, whatever it was, but it just seems to be like scoring. Like, I can't, like, I feel like I'm a really good scorer, and I feel like just having Ray and Gabe and Bake and Duke, Colin, those guys around me really helps it make it easier for me to be that scorer, because I have so many more threats around me.
Right. So you're achieving career marks pretty much across the board. And that's including what you accomplished at Indian Hills. So what are the factors that contributed to you having this career year?
After I got cleared, I would just say working. Like, the day I got cleared, I worked out at 6 o'clock later on that day. So it was just the day that from the day that I got cleared, I've just been working and trying to really basically say make up for the lost time that I had, because everybody else mostly everybody else, not everybody, had been playing for the last 16 months, and I basically had some catching up to do. So I had to work harder than I was working before.
What was the toughest thing to get caught back up on? Like, is it just getting in shape, getting your shot back, or what was it?
Getting in shape. Getting in shape was probably the hardest thing, just because of the mental blocks that you have after going through something that I went through. Sometimes it's like harder to push yourself, but once I got past that, it was easy. Like, no question, I could push myself harder once I knew like I was fine. Once I really knew
Right. Right.
myself that I was fine, it was easy for me to just like push through.
Right. Never experienced that, but I can imagine how scary it could be. You start working out, your heart starts beating, and yeah, it could be probably pretty scary. Beside all the numbers that I mentioned at the top, you have excelled this season in pick and roll, in ISO in terms of points per possession. You one of the nation's leaders in drawing fouls. What aspect of your game, I've mentioned a lot, including defensive numbers. What aspect of your game are you most pleased with?
Oh, the defense. Defense is probably this is probably the best defensive effort I played my whole career, and I love it. Like, I feel like that really gets me going on the offensive end. Getting a block shot, or tipping a pass, getting a steal, or just help getting in the passing lane, getting a deflection so my teammate could get the ball. That is something that I really take pride in now, just defending and being that player.
Right. And you're averaging over 3 per game if you combine your steals and blocks per game, which is an impressive number. So the team is also having a brilliant season. You guys are in first place in the WAC, 26-4 overall record. The schedule has included victories over San Francisco, San Diego State, Louisiana Tech. You had a close loss to South Carolina in there. You finished the regular season on Saturday at Cal Baptist. And meanwhile, Tarleton State could theoretically tie you guys for first place. Do you know what the tiebreaker is there? Has that been discussed? If you guys would finish?
I don't know if it's like the score or what it might be, because we did beat them by
Pretty
a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're like do the score, or I don't know how it works. So
Right. I know
think we still have like a game lead or something like that right now, but I don't know.
Right. I know in the Ivy League, for example, because I just was at a game there over the weekend, the tiebreaker there is the net rating. So if it's something like that, you guys got them there. So, whether you're the top seed or not in the WAC tourney, I think it's pretty clear that you guys are going to be the favorite. Tarleton, of course, they've beaten you. Seattle has a good team, and they were considered to be, one of the better teams in the conference, heading into the season. However, despite everything you've accomplished, 26-4, I would like to repeat, the experts say you need to win the tourney to get into the tournament. How do you feel about that? And has there been any talk about the team possibly making the tournament, even if you didn't win the WAC?
I mean, I feel like that's just them underestimating us, and that's perfectly fine. Like, we're just gonna go out and play how we need to play on Saturday at Cal Bap, and then after that game, we're gonna worry about the first game on the 15th. When we play in Vegas, and then after that, we're going to worry about the game on the 16th. So I just feel like if we do those things and take it one game at a time, the way that we're playing, we're going to end up in the tournament, regardless of if they think we have to win or not. So I just feel like we do that, we're going to be in the tournament anyway.
Right. For the record, we had Tyon, I don't know if you know him, Tyon Spillers plays for Appalachian State. Appalachian State is having a very similar year to you guys. Mm-hmm. And I said to Tyon, and I'm going to say it to you, I really think that this system needs to be overhauled. If you have such a great season and then you lose one game and you're out, that's just not right. But anyway, we'll move on. That's my politics.
Yeah, I don't understand. Like, we beat San Diego State, and then they've had like a lot more losses. Well, not a lot, but they've lost more than we've lost, and they're just
right.
Okay, though, we're just gonna win. We just have to win these next couple games.
Right. I just think what I'm saying is, even if you didn't, I think the tournament should be structured so that they give you consideration even if you don't win that tournament. However, there is some good news. And I don't even know if you know this, but you probably do. I didn't know this till last night when I was researching. There's one thing that does take some pressure off. Tarleton is not eligible to win the or not eligible to play in the NCAAs because they're new to D1. So if I understand correctly, if they win the WAC, you go because you'll be the highest seeded team remaining.
No. If we have to both make it to the championship game. So if we don't make it to the championship game and they make it to the championship game, whoever they beat in the championship, they go. So we have to.
That's not what I read. That's not. I understand what you're saying, but that's not where I don't remember the source. But okay, that's good to know. All right, so we'll move off the bracketology part of this. As I said before, you joined a talented group last year in the NCAA tournament. This group gave Gonzaga everything it wanted in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And in my opinion, and probably others' opinions, this team appears even stronger this season. Can you speak to that? And what do you think makes this team especially dangerous in March?
Like I've said before in previous interviews, I just feel like right now we're on the uptick and we're playing some of the best defense that we've played all year, and we're scoring the ball like better, I feel like, than we have all year. So I feel like we're really playing the way that we need to play right now to really do what we want to do in the tournament. And yes, I feel like we have a more talented team than last year.
Right. I think personally, as I said, Ray was big time scorer last year. Now you're added to the mix. And then you throw in some of the transfer bigs that you got, like, Sidney Curry and who's the kid from Arizona State, the 7-footer? Duke Brennan. You throw those guys into the mix, and so you have a great combination of bigs, smalls. I really think your team has the feel of a Florida Atlantic team. And we know what happened there. So before we wrap this up, I wanted to ask you a couple questions about you, other than your health. Fun questions like, what do you like off the court? What's your major? What are some of your off-court interests and hobbies?
Off the court, I love anime. One of my favorites is Hunter x Hunter and Jujutsu Kaisen. And then the others, I just really study the game, like watching a whole lot of film on like others who can like score the ball and stuff like that, who are really good. So I do that. But
pro or college guys?
I watched pros who were in college. Like I watched their college highlights.
Ah, interesting. That's interesting.
And shoot, I'm a gamer. I love Call of Duty.
Okay. Are you in anime? Are you actually artistic?
No. I don't draw. I don't do that. I just watch it. It just looks really fun.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. And what's your major?
Sports management.
Interesting. So with that, are you thinking of, more the general manager scouting angle, or more into communications and broadcasting and stuff like that?
Like GM scouting, that type of stuff.
Okay. Interesting. All right. Lastly, got one last question for you, then I'm going to let you go. I hear NBA scouts have been around to watch some of your games. At the same time, if I have this correct, you can still play one more season in college, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know you want to focus on this season. I don't want to delve into this deeply, but at the same time, you got to be thinking about it a little. So it seems like a no-brainer that after the season you would test the NBA waters and then make your decision whether to play one more year in college or not. Is that the plan?
I really haven't really made any decisions on that yet, to be honest with you. It's just trying to figure out the rest of this year and getting to that tournament. That's really what is my main concern at the moment.
Right. And I understand that, and I think that's smart. All right, Tyon. I know you're busy. I know you've had a couple of interviews already today. I appreciate your time. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I wish you and the team the best for the rest of the season. And maybe you could come back and visit us after the season's over. Maybe you'll be a Final Four darling, or maybe you decide to test the NBA waters and we can talk to you when you're going through that process or something like that.
No problem.
All right, Tyon. Thanks for coming.
Good day.
All right. It was great talking to Tyon. And now we're going to move on to our draft stock report. But it's going to be a little different this week in the sense that since the season is winding down, and some of these players, if they don't win their conference tournament, their season's over. So I thought, unless maybe they get invited to the NIT, but apparently the NIT is moving away from their usual format. I think this is the last year where if you win your so like if Grand Canyon wins their conference but doesn't win the tournament, they were automatically in the NIT. The NIT is changing that for next year so that we have a bunch more of, Kansas States and stuff like that in the NIT. Joy. Just what I want, to see the 11th best team in the Big Ten play the 12th best team in the Big 12.
As God intended.
Yes. NIT should change the same. You know that back in the day, the NIT really used to be the national championship. And
right.
And then they competed. Then they competed with the NCAA, and you had to make a choice because you'd get invited to both. Like if you were the number one team, and most people for a while preferred to go to the NIT because it already had established itself. So yeah, but that was many, many years ago. All right. So the way we're going to do the stock report this week is we're going to talk about some Conference of the Year candidates. And basically, the whole point of it is for a lot of these guys is we may not get a chance to see them play much more. So we'd like to talk about them because we're not going to have many more stock reports once the season's over. So mainly that. But before we do, we're going to start with Drew, I got to ask you a question.
Yes.
And bear with me. I got to look this up. I'm going to give you statistics of a player. And I want you to let me know if with these statistics, what you would think without knowing, this player, what you would think.
Right.
All right. Averaging 16.5 points per game, averaging 8 rebounds a game, 2.9 assists, 1 steal, 1.6 blocks, shooting 51% from the floor, 35% from 3 on over 3 attempts per game, and 68% from the free throw line. And his player efficiency rating is rounded up to 27. What would you think of that player?
I mean, I think that's a guy. Can I just get position?
He's a center.
I'm assuming a big.
Center, big. Power forward.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those raw numbers, and I think you have to think that this is one of the best players, regardless of what conference he's in. Just those raw numbers, like this guy.
He's in a Power 6 conference.
Yeah. So if you're in a Power 6 conference putting up those numbers, I have to wager that you're in contention for one of the top bigs in the country.
Do you have any idea whose numbers they are?
I do, because I did a little homework before you asked. I did a little homework on the guys that we were going to talk. I'm guessing that is none other than war wound survivor from Storming the Court, Kyle Slutowski from Duke.
Oh my God!
And his close to almost had to require amputation.
Yeah, that was incredibly overblown. Oh my God! And you know what? In all these guys on TV who always say, they were always laughing and joking and saying, that's a legitimate court storm. That's a legitimate court storm.
Yeah.
That night, and maybe the night after, they were all like saying, court storming should be banned. Court storming should be banned. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell? You've been saying for like 5 years, you've been encouraging it. And now all of a sudden, and all somebody did, it didn't run into him on purpose, by the way. I mean, yeah, the fans should be more careful, and yeah, they should get the players out of the way. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
yes, it is Kyle Filipowski. So, the reason I said, you look at those numbers and you're like, wow, that's a really good player.
absolutely.
But yet, when you think about Kyle Filipowski this season, there's something off.
So I know I've mentioned on the show multiple times that my brother's a big Duke fan, and like a legitimate Duke fan. We're not talking about a guy who just, knows the number one option on the team. Like he follows the team. He's not as versed into college basketball as like you or I are, but he does follow the Dukies through and through. And he said the same thing, and I've asked him, and I don't. Last year as a freshman, I thought one of the things I kind of liked about Flip was I felt like there was he kind of had an edge to him. I felt like he kind of had like this, like almost like Hunter Dickinson, like
Or Christian Laettner, Christian
Laettner, like this like kind of villain edge to him.
Mhm.
And I appreciated that because it's like, hey man, you went to Duke, highly touted, you fit the bill, to a T, buy into that. And this year, I just feel like that part of it is gone. And they're not empty calories. I mean, I don't want to sit and say it's empty calories. Duke is still winning. They're still, I mean, coming into this season, we all thought very highly of them. They were another team that a lot of people had as a Final Four contender. I'm not sure where we had them coming in. I wasn't on that episode, but I just feel like he just hasn't had that same oomph, that same punch. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just, as a freshman, he impressed as a freshman, came in, expectations on his shoulder, played well. And maybe we expected maybe more of a leap in some capacity. I mean, he's definitely been better. I think if you look around the board, like he's increased his efficiency, he's scoring better, he's defending the rim at a higher clip. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like maybe the lightning in the bottle kind of moment for him had kind of come and gone. And Hunter Dickinson is almost kind of comes to mind, and just as a guy when he first came on the scene, everyone was like, this guy is super dominant, and he's still a great college player, but I feel like maybe that hype of like that next level jump, and I think Flip is a better prospect professionally still, because I feel like he's more comfortable stepping out and banging the three. He's younger, all that stuff. But I don't know. I can't put a definitive stamp onto why, but I just feel like I just don't have the same I guess energy about him as I had last year. And I don't know why. I don't
maybe
know what
it's the
that reason is.
expectations, because we
Yes.
picked him. I think he was our pick for national. No, he wasn't. Zach Edey was, but he was second in our voting for National Player of the Year. We picked him to win Player of the Year in the ACC, and maybe it's just our expectations. But I've been much more impressed with freshman Jared McCain. I think he's the best player on Duke.
The most dynamic for sure.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely the most dynamic.
Yeah. And, that kid is averaging, 13 and a half a game, shooting 41% from deep on almost six attempts per game. And he wasn't really, of all the Duke freshmen, when they first started, in like preseason or whatever, he was probably the least one that wasn't getting much respect. And he's turned out to be the best of the freshman class. Let me ask you this. Who do you think, because I think this is a tough call, who do you think should win? I think both of these players, these Duke players, are in the Player of the Year running in the ACC, but I don't see them winning it. Who do you think deserves to win Player of the Year in the ACC?
Oh, that's really hard.
It is hard, but to me, I can narrow it down to two.
Who would you narrow it down to? Because I have to actually say, I honestly didn't
I
think
would
about
narrow it down to RJ Davis and PJ Hall, and I would give the nod to PJ Hall.
I would probably lean RJ Davis, but I actually didn't even think about PJ Hall. I was thinking RJ Davis is kind of where I was leaning up, but I think PJ Hall is actually kind of the dark horse in terms of name brand. Like, he doesn't have the name, obviously. I would lean RJ.
What do you
I feel
mean?
like every time.
What do you
I've
mean?
seen-
He's been on this show. We made him a national household name.
relative to a North Carolina or Duke player, the average person is going to be like, who? I would probably lean RJ because some of the games that guy has had, and I mean, especially for the turnaround. I mean, we've talked before about the just disaster that last year was for that team, and then for him to can come back again and flip the narrative once again and become one of the most dangerous guards in the country and lead that team. Yeah, I think that that's where I would give the nod to. But
yeah,
I don't think
can
either
see
of these
that.
Duke guys. I don't think either of these Duke guys are really in contention. I totally can see, all conference, no doubt. Flip will be first team all conference for sure. McCain will be all freshman, and we'll probably get into that maybe second team all conference. Because I feel like they only do. I think the ACC does 5. They do like 5-5, and then they do I think they do 5-5-5. If I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Unlike the WCC who does like 10, 5, and 5 or whatever the hell they do.
Yeah, it's insane.
But I would lean RJ personally.
Well, the reason why I had Filipowski on here, he has been playing hotter, better lately. He's been hotter lately. So so in the mode of our usual who's hot, he would definitely have qualified there. I think McCain has been pretty much hot from say January on. Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to the Big 12. I think the Big 12 player of the year is pretty much that argument's over, though. You could make an argument that I think you easily could make an argument that Hunter Dickinson has been the most productive player.
Yes.
I think the player of the year is going to go to Jamal Shed. And actually, I want to throw something in there while we're talking briefly about Hunter Dickinson. Can you imagine Hunter Dickinson being interviewed? So if he was the center for Duke and he was the one that got run over, I mean, Filipowski looked like, I don't know, like a Ukrainian war victim or something, and Hunter Dickinson would have probably said, the next time somebody runs into me on the court during a court storm, they're going to get a punch in the head. That's what Hunter Dickinson would have said. And Filipowski's like, they ran into me on purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ever going to walk again.
Yeah, Hunter Dickinson would have put somebody in a hospital. He would have fought the entire student section by himself. That guy is that's kind of the arc. I don't want to say that's the arc that I put Flip on, but I thought that maybe there was like that edge to him. Now Hunter's kind of the extreme of that, but I do agree. I think Jamal is the player of the year. And again, I think this Houston team, I think he has the narrative behind him. He comes into a team that enters the conference for the first year when the Big 12 was, in contention for the best that I can remember being in a while, at least, in recent years. I mean, just absolutely loaded. For them to come in and kind of win a share of it and, I mean, pick up big wins. I mean, they went and took teams down at their place on the road. I think it's kind of has to go to him. I agree that Hunter, the best probably individual stat, and if Kansas had maybe been a little bit closer and hadn't dropped some of those games, I think when you do player of the year, I think team success is obviously a component of that, but I think if it's within a game, maybe even 2, you can maybe lean towards the more productive player. But I think you have narrative. That's not to take away that Jamal has been super productive this year. He had that big game at Texas where he had like 25, 26. He had a big game against I was in Monterey, I think, when this one happened, when they took down Iowa State. Right. So I think, he's the player of the year. You go the number 1 overall team in the country, the best player on said team, and then the narrative of coming into the best conference probably, or the deepest conference, and winning it in your first years speaks volumes.
A lot of people like him as an NBA draft prospect. What are you thinking there?
I worry about the efficiency. I think his offensive game is
for his career. He shot less
volume.
than 30% from deep, and this year shooting 32%.
Yeah, he gets a lot of the numbers, and this isn't taking anything away because it's what's asked of him in this system, but he's in that role where it's like, you're the lead guard, you're the best scoring option. You and Cryer are the best scoring options we have, especially along the perimeter. And so he has the absolute green light. I mean, if you go back and look at his last 4 games, all wins, by the way, he hasn't shot better than 33% in his last 4 games. Now, you know, he put up 16, 14, 9, and 12, but you're like, the percentages aren't great.
No.
Now he makes up for it. You know, he competes on defense. I think he's continuously
good
grown as a playmaker, but it's like at 6'1",
yeah, that's
with that lack of efficiency, I could definitely see him being the type of guy that you maybe, you know, you throw on a summer league team and is in the G League because he's going to bring just that Houston brand of intensity. He's going to bring that willingness to take tough shots. But the question is in college, that willingness to take them is a skill because, you know, it's not, there's so many guys that aren't able to get to their own spots and elevate and take shots. In the NBA, for the most part, everybody can. But just because you will take them, it becomes more about, can you make them consistently? And I don't know if he can. I haven't seen enough. I love what he brings to the table as a competitor, as a leader for that team, as like kind of a culture guy. And he's had big games. You know, I'm pointing out negative ones, but he was lights out against Iowa State. That was the last game that I watched the Baylor game. So that was the last game one of the last games I watched him play, and he was lights out. But then the next game against Baylor, he was 29% from the floor on 17 attempts.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so
I'm feeling the same. I think he's a borderline second round pick.
Yeah.
And yeah. All right. So we're going to move on to the Big East. Who do you think should be player of the year there? And that to me comes down to 2.
For me, I would probably go Newton out of UConn.
Wow. Okay.
That's who that's who I would take. This is one of those conferences though where
he's not
so
one
hard.
of my 2.
Really?
Yeah.
I just
he would be one of my 4 if I had to expand the list to 4.
It's kind of a similar argument to Jamal. Like his efficiency isn't great for the year. I think he's like maybe 42% from the field. But I look at just like, again, senior and just literally the definition of a stat sheet stuffer. I mean, in college, it's very difficult to average even double digits in scoring and 5 rebounds, 5 assists. That's very difficult to do. Not a lot of guys can do it. And this guy's averaging 15, 7, and 6 on the best, in my opinion, the best team in the country. And again, has some monster games when he's needed to. He was super big when they lost to Creighton. He was like the one bright spot that kept them in that game. Way back when they were at Kansas, he was going absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So I just think
he could get you a triple double any night because he's a really good rebounding guard because he has good size for a guard.
Yeah. That's who I would go. But I still like Baylor Shireman out of Creighton is a guy that I think like well within that conversation. I mean, I think Tyler Kolek is in there, obviously. The Big East is loaded. I mean, there's a lot of guys that if you took Tyler Kolek and put him in a lot of other conferences with the record Marquette has and the success they've had, if he doesn't get injured and miss these last couple of games, he's probably your player of the year in a lot of other conferences. So I would go Newton, but I think there are probably 5 guys that could win this award, and I would have absolutely zero problem with any of them. And I think Shireman and Kolek are right up there for me. And I think Klingen's going to be in there too, like defensive, because he brings such an edge on the defensive side too. Yep. So there's like 5 guys.
Kalkbrenner, I'd give the nod to Kalkbrenner over Klingen just because Kalkbrenner's been there all year. Klingen has been hot of late.
Lately,
and he's been I love that team. That team, believe it or not, is looking better.
Yeah,
and better because Klingen's playing better and better.
Yeah, so I think this is probably the hardest one to predict. But also, we all know the rant I went on about the WCC and how I'm like, how do we give the award to like the 5th best guy? These are the comments where, in my opinion, whoever I believe the 5th best guy to be wins it. I don't think I'd have any super gripe, like I said, because there's 5 guys that we just named. Any one of those guys gets this award in any given year, or you take them and put them in any other conference, they might be the front runner outside of maybe the SEC and maybe the Big Ten. Like these guys all can win it anywhere else. So I would go Newton though. My vote goes to Baylor Shireman.
Yeah.
That would be my first choice. And second was a player we haven't mentioned, and that's Dale Carter.
I didn't even think about it. think about him.
Or not Dale Carter. What am I saying? Devin Carter.
Devin Carter.
Devin Carter. But I would give it to Baylor. But the one thing I want to say about Devin is he's kept that team competitive and one of the best conferences in America, pretty much single-handedly. So yeah. But you said stat sheet stuffer, which I can never get out of my mouth without. It's like rivalry week. But anyway, I'm just going to give you Baylor's numbers because he's just been destroying it, especially of late. 18.5 points per game, 8.9 rebounds per game. So basically 9, 4 assists per game, 1 steal per game. And the only number that's not pretty is blocks, 0.2 a game. But shooting splits, 45 from the floor, 38 from deep on 8 attempts per game, and also 86 from the free throw line. So yeah, I would lean toward Baylor. I think my third choice would probably be Kolek, and then my fourth choice would be Newton. And fifth, if I had to throw a fifth in there, it'd be Kalkbrenner. But you know what? If any of those 5 win, I think it's close. So, all right, we'll move on to the Big Ten. And obviously, we know who's going to win the Big Ten Player of the Year. But I want to talk about some other guys that are having brilliant years. And some of them are pretty much off the radar. And all these guys should be all conference. And that's Khalil Ware of Indiana. And actually, Indiana's been playing a little better of late. They could be a spoiler in the Big Ten tournament. Braden Smith has just absolutely played beautiful ball. Everybody's recognizing it except for draft people, but he is small. He's only like 6 foot.
He's 6, yeah.
But I mean, in some ways, you could like him better than Kolek. But Kolek is taller,
Yeah.
But playmaking, I think is, he's up there that way. He's probably not as creative as Kolek. Kolek could make some, pretty Pete Maravich-like passes at times. But, and I think Kolek's better than attacking the rim for sure. But I think Braden Smith is a better shooter. The other 2 guys I wanted to mention were Coleman Hawkins, who we early on in the season, maybe our first stock report, we had him as cold. He's not cold any longer. And if Zach Edey wasn't in this conference, he might be Player of the Year in the Big Ten. The other one is Marcus Damask, the guard for Illinois, who has just been kind of Mr. Everything. We talked about we talked about it all throughout the preseason. Who's going to be Illinois' point guard? Who's going to be Illinois' point guard? Well, it turned out to be a small forward from Southern Illinois named Marcus Damask, who's actually turned out to be that team's point guard. A 6'6", 6'7" point guard who can rebound, who can shoot, who can post you up inside. Those 4 I wanted to mention, I all think are deserving of being all conference players. Any comments?
No, I think this is one of those conferences. Obviously, like, we know who the guy is, and he's the guy in the country. Like, look, if Zach Edey doesn't win this award, it's going to be kind of a shock to everybody.
Yeah,
I've had my piece on me not being the biggest Zach Edey guy and not really believing that. I won't say not believing, but not necessarily buying into the ability at the next level. But you don't have the record they have as a team and put up the numbers you have as an individual and not win player and conference player of the year. I think it's that simple.
All right, we'll move on to the Mountain West, and I think this is probably more wide open than the Big East.
Absolutely.
You could probably, it might come down to 4 guys actually. But
there's 3 guys off the top of my head that I think are going to be.
All right, let's hear it. Let's hear them.
I think a guy who was on our very first stock report is hot. Ledee has been a monster start the year and has been a monster all year for the San Diego State team. As a team, they've kind of fluctuated. I think I think the viewpoint of them was a little bit skewed because I think they made that run last year. But they lost. I mean, they lost Bradley. They obviously lost Johnson, who goes over to Arizona. Like, it wasn't going to be the same team. And so I think them kind of fluctuating in that 20 to like right on the cusp of votes is where they've been at. Like, I think this is a team that absolutely has Sweet 16 upside. Again, I don't think I would be shocked if they made a bit of a run, but he's been awesome, like consistently awesome. And it's probably, if you were just going off of pure numbers, would probably kind of be the nod, just because he's over 20 a game, which is tough to do in college. He's averaging over 8 boards. They have an impressive win in a super tough, or an impressive resume in a super tough conference, and played good teams in the preseason. They handled St. Mary's. They took down my Zags. They played Grand Canyon, who we talked about as being a team that's underappreciated. I always pronounce this guy's name wrong. Tyson, is it Dagenhart?
Yeah.
Dagenhart,
right.
from Boise, I think is another guy like nobody knows about.
Right.
I think
he was on the show.
Really good
he was
player.
on the show in the preseason.
Is a really, really good player, man. Like, just a really solid guy. You want to talk about who's hot? He's a guy.
By the way, you have to adjust your mindset. If he's been on the show, he's almost assuredly a household name.
But like for us, like, he's been playing awesome ball. He hasn't had a like quote unquote bad game really since like January. And I remember he was bad against New Mexico. They won that game, but he himself wasn't great. But like, he's been awesome, and his numbers are great. He's averaging like, I think 17 and 6 a game. And then another guy who I believe was on the show from the Aggies, Great Osobor.
Oh yeah, Great Osobor was on. Yeah, just recently.
Has been another guy that I think he's probably my number. Him and Ledee are probably my 1-2. I think Tyson's kind of more of the dark horse,
and not Isaiah Stevens. See, now Isaiah Stevens would have been my first pick. He's my pick.
Even think about him. I would still go Jaden Ledee. That would be my 4.
I really think there's not much to Colorado State besides Isaiah Stevens and Nick Clifford. Other than that, it's really, I mean, some of those guys not too long ago were playing Division II or Division III basketball. And then you have Nick Clifford and Isaiah Stevens. So yeah, he would be my pick. I think it's tough for me between Osobor and Ledee for second, and then Dagenhart would be my 4th choice. But the one guy I wanted to talk about is Nick Clifford, because no one's talking about him. When we think Colorado State, we think of Isaiah Stevens, and I really think Nick Clifford might be the better pro prospect. I mean, we're talking about a 6'6" wing, and he's long. I don't know what his wingspan is, but it looks long. But on the season, listen to this, for a wing, 53% from the field, 39 from deep. Now, it only takes about 3 attempts per game. 81 from the free throw line, 7.3 rebounds per game, 2.7 assists per game, 1.5 steals, and almost a block per game, 0.8. Those are outstanding player of the year type numbers, except for maybe the points per game, because that's where Isaiah Stevens is the lead scorer on this team. Yeah. But man, talk about efficient, and this guy could play defense. I think he's a pro prospect. Now, he could come back next year if he wants, but he's on our top 200, and I can't believe that no one talks about this guy.
I think if I did my 4, I'd go Jaden Ledee. I would probably go Stevens 2. I would probably go Great 3, Tyson 4, and then if we want to do like a dark horse out of the top 4, then I think Nick is totally in there. I just think James.
Right. Well, he's not going to get a lot of votes because of Stevens.
Yeah, but like if you were to do a dark horse like out of nowhere, maybe people would be like, because there is always that conversation people have, like best player on a team and most important player on a team. People like at Menlo, our best player, center, who was co-player of the year. Our most important player was our 6'4" point guard, because he was the only ball handler we had. So like that argument, can change. Right. I just think Jaden Ledee's been an absolute force this year. I mean, literally didn't score under 12. His lowest outing on the year was 12 points. And that was actually his most recent game when they lost to UNLV. And I'm like, if you're telling me your worst game, at least from a scoring standpoint and efficiency standpoint, only made 2 shots, is 12 points, 7 boards. I'm like, that's against the UNLV team that is one of the like streakiest, kind of weirdest teams in the country, in my opinion. Like, lose to anybody on any night, beat anybody on any night. Like, this team took St. Mary's to overtime and beat Creighton.
Yeah,
Like,
they
this team can play.
beat the crap out of Creighton.
Beat the Creighton out of, yeah. And it has
beat
been
the Creighton out of Creighton.
and has like wins in the Mountain West, which is, cannibalizing itself. I'd go Jalen Ledee, but I didn't even think about Stevens. I as a team, I was never super sold on Colorado State.
I'm not either because I said they're made up of a bunch of D2 and D3 players. But
you have to give credit to Stevens because he's elevated them he's averaging like 7 assists a game, I think.
But they wouldn't they'd probably be a middle of the pack team at best without Nick Clifford. And I think Nick Clifford should be first team all conference. That's I'll leave it at that. Maybe even defensive player of the year in that conference. And that is a conference that doesn't have a ton of great defenders. Or at least from an NBA standpoint, where Clifford is like your ideal. Well, I don't know. I guess maybe if he was like 6'9", he'd probably be ideal. But all right, so we'll move on to the Pac-12. I pretty much have. I think I know who I like hands down in the Pac-12, but I'll hear from you first.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like, again, we talked about Colorado as a team kind of not hitting their mark necessarily where we thought they could be with the talent on the team, but I really like KJ Simpson, and I think if we're talking like the best player, I don't know. Every time I see that guy play, I just think he's always contributing. We talked about stat sheet stuffing with Newton earlier. And KJ is doing like the exact same thing. He's like right at 20 points a game, I believe, almost 6 boards, almost 5 assists. And the other guy that I think you have to give consideration just because of how the team is, Arizona, is Caleb Love, as I think would be the number 2. And I think KJ is just far more efficient and does more. Now he's asked to do more because, guys have been in and out of the lineup. He's had to. But I just think KJ put together, a really well-rounded season. He's had some big games. Like him and Caleb have gone toe-to-toe a couple of times this year, and I think KJ has been just as good, if not even better. Just maybe the outcome favored Arizona, but like in the individual matchup, they faced each other. And I think especially the last time they played, which I think the last time I watched Colorado play is when they lost to Arizona. I haven't seen them in a while. I saw them play Cal, and he was really good against Cal. But yeah, I'm gonna go.
I saw him last night against Oregon, and he was kind of off last night. He still had good. I think he had like 17 points, but he wasn't overly efficient. But that's usually not him. So
he had in that game, he had 17 points, 2 steals, 6 boards, 6 assists. And we're saying that that's a night where we're like, he wasn't on his sharpest. I'm like, there's not a lot of guys in the country, period, that if you say 17, 2 steals, 6 boards, 6 assists, and they left some meat on the bone. So I actually really like KJ. I know Caleb Love's kind of the fancy household name, and I think because Arizona is just that big brand, and they're a top 10 seed or top 10 team and all that, I would be shocked to see Caleb come away with it. But I think KJ played awesome basketball this year. I mean, if you look at his game log, this dude has played 36 or more minutes every game except one since January 18th. So this guy is not coming out of games. He's playing every minute of every game, putting up awesome numbers, super efficient. And, the Pac is a little bit overall disappointing this year. USC was disappointing. UCLA was down. Colorado was disappointing. But I still think there's talent, obviously, in this conference. And I just think that game in and game out across the year, outside of he had UCLA at UCLA, he's been awesome. That's who I would give it to. But Caleb's probably my runner-up.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's close, and it all depends on what kind of take you want to look at it. But KJ on the season, 50% from the floor, 46% from deep on 4.6 attempts per game, 87 from the free throw line, 5.6 rebounds a game, 4.8 assists per game, 1.8 steals per game, and of course 20 points per game. From a statistical standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, you have to give it to KJ Simpson. However, you can make the argument, and you certainly would, Arizona wouldn't be anywhere close to where they are without Caleb Love. So it all depends how you want to look at it. But if you look at them head to head, KJ gets it. But in terms of team success, Caleb gets it. So it all depends on how you will look at it.
For sure.
All right. So we'll move on. SEC. I think this one is pretty much hands down. I think this one's locked up. But I think there's two players, one that I have listed and another player that I don't have listed that should be given consideration. But the player I like, to win this award is Dalton Connect. You could argue that he hasn't been the most overall productive player, and that certainly would be true. You could argue that he's not a super great defender. I think that also would be true. But from an offensive standpoint, this guy's he's on fire right now. I mean, he's good for like at least 20 a night, at least. And can easily get into the 30s. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think this is a 2-horse race. I think it's Sears, Mark Sears out of Alabama, and Dalton Connect are going to go toe to toe. I think Sears might be just a little bit more impactful because he's at that point guard position. He's kind of running the show over at Alabama in terms of just like, I guess if we go back again to like importance to the team. Now, Dalton's in a unique situation though, because we don't think of Tennessee usually having that like super dynamic score. And he's one of the reasons why I feel so much more confident in this team than I have in the past, is because we know what Tennessee will do defensively. We know what guys like Zakai Ziegler will do at the point and Vescovi can do from three. But now they have a guy who legitimately at all three levels can get you 20 to 25 a night. I think it's those two guys are the front runners. I probably agree with Dalton by the slimmest of margins. I don't really feel strongly either way. I think like the super dark horse who I don't think is winning it, but I think a guy whose name should be in there is John Broome.
Yeah. That would be the other. He would be, to me, him and Sears are kind of equal.
Yeah.
And Connect's way ahead of them. But I did want to bring up Sears because we haven't talked about him all year long. I think in a funny way, this in the same breath that I'm complimenting him, I think the fact that Mark Sears is Alabama's best player is one of the things that scares me about Alabama, because to me he's a good college point guard, but he's really the only one on that team you can count on consistently. And what is he, 6'1", 6'2"?
6'2" at his biggest, probably.
Yeah, a 6'1", they say 6'1". Yeah. I mean, of course, he is averaging over 21 points per game, shooting 44% from deep, 87 from the line, 4 rebounds a game, 4 assists per game, 1.7 steals. But I think when you're thinking Final Four, you always kind of want at least one pro on that team.
Totally, yeah.
And I'm not sure Alabama has that. And certainly their best player by far has been Sears. And so there you go. All right. So now we'll move on to the smaller conferences, starting off with the A10. Max Shulga has been bothered by back spasms. I think he missed a little bit of time, played tonight against Dayton. I knew the halftime score there, but I didn't watch the game yet. Did you happen to notice Max tonight?
Yes, he did play tonight. Played really well. Like I thought was as he has been throughout the year, kind of the best player for VCU. He had 14 points, 6 boards, 5 assists, played 40 minutes because it went to overtime. Hit 46 if you round up, 46% of his shots, 44% from 3, and had no turnovers. And he did pick up 4 fouls, but again, that's kind of the byproduct of him being out there for that long in an overtime game. But he was 4 of 9 from 3, and literally didn't turn the ball over, which I thought he played awesome, hit some big shots, and was a big reason why they jumped out to a big lead against Dayton. And then when Dayton made their comeback, was able to help them kind of weather that storm. They did end up dropping the game 91-86, but he looked all right out there to me. Like I said, played 40 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I think he's a dark horse NBA prospect. I think the award in the A10 is going to Deron Holmes. I mean,
that's probably the easiest one. I'll be honest, that might be the easiest one out of the. I know we're talking mid-major, but still a bigger mid-major conference. Like if I had to pick out of the Power Six and then the bigger mid-majors like the Mountain West, the A10, I think Deron Holmes is the easiest. Well, outside of Edie, he's probably the most guaranteed lock. There's no debate. Give him the reward. Hell, like don't have a ceremony, just mail it to him. It should be on his be in his locker waiting for him. He was awesome this year, and he was awesome tonight. He had like 24, 11, and like 3 assists. He was fantastic.
The reason I bring up Max is because VCU is certainly a bubble team. They're going to have to. They really needed tonight to probably even really be seriously in that bubble discussion. They needed to win tonight, and they didn't. So his season, is going to be closing down. But he has a lot of Sam Merrill in him. He's probably more of a point guard than Sam was at Utah State. And of course, now Mac Shulga is a Utah State product, played there for 3 years, could play again next year. But this year he shot 44% from the field, 42% from deep on 6 attempts per game, 88 from the line, 4.9 rebounds, 3.6 assists. His defensive numbers aren't great, 1 steal per game and 0.2 blocks per game. But he's averaging 15 on the year. He can play make, he can score, and like I said, he gives me that Sam Merrill vibe. For his career, 39% from deep. And he's a bigger guard, for a point guard, 6'4". He can also play shooting guard, very much like Sam. And Sam was a shooting guard, the lead guard for Utah State. But he also did a lot of playmaking for them. So, yeah. All right. So moving on, we're going to go to the ASUN conference, and we picked Jake and I in the preseason. We previewed, I believe, 14 conferences, and for the other 18 conferences, we picked 10 teams that we thought could do serious damage, or we're going to be teams to be reckoned with. Grand Canyon wasn't in it because we previewed that conference. Princeton wasn't in it because we previewed that. But one of the teams was Eastern Kentucky in the ASUN. And Eastern Kentucky won the regular season title. I don't know how close it was, but they were pretty clearly the best team in the conference this year. And their best player, Isaiah Kotsart, who's kind of a undersized center, won the award. But the guy I want to talk about is Chaz Lanier. Do you know if Northern Florida is still alive in the tournament, or is their season already done?
If you want to talk about Rich, I'll look it up really quick for you.
Okay. But anyway, Chaz is the best, to me, is the best pro prospect in the ASUN. And so I wanted to bring that up, and we have already talked to Northern Florida about him coming on the show when the season was over. So that's probably going to be soon. But on the season, he averaged 20 points per game, shot 51% from the field, 44% from deep on 7.5 attempts per game, 88 from the free throw line, 4.8 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.9 steals, 0.3 blocks. And this was really a huge leap for somebody who really hadn't done much for the first 3 years at Northern Florida. Again, he could come back next year, but he's ultra athletic. He can definitely finish well above the rim. And my advice is for him to, shouldn't say this out loud, but maybe transfer somewhere else where he could get more visibility. But I think with more visibility on a bigger team, he might definitely move up draft boards. And people are already talking about him, so he's not a true secret.
Yeah, it looks like for the ASUN, the championship match is set for Sunday, and it's going to be between the 2 seed Stetson and the 4 seed Austin P.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Stetson has some good players. All right, so now we're going to move on to the American Conference. And what a weird conference that is. If we look at bracketology, I mean, Southern Florida won the regular season pretty easily, actually,
Yeah, they
over
lost one
in a
game, I
conference
think.
that, huh?
I think they lost one game in conference play.
Right. And this is a conference that has Florida Atlantic. This is a conference that has Memphis, SMU, and we could go on. But here's the weird thing. Southern Florida, even though they are ranked now, I think they're 24th in the country.
Yeah.
They are considered a bubble team because computers hate them. And this is, again, I'm going to say this till somebody changes it or we do our own. Obviously, we've been talking about doing our own ranking system. These rankings just put way too much weight on what happened early in the season. These teams are changing too much because you got too many new pieces. And yeah, and I think Southern Florida falls in that category. But the one guy I wanted to mention, he's not having statistically a stellar year. He's having a good year. And that is, I don't know if I want to call him their best player, but he's their most interesting player from a pro prospect situation. And that's Kashawn Pryor, who's a 6'10", 200 power forward slash center who actually, he's kind of falls into that unicorn territory where he can handle the ball and so forth. On the season, he's averaging 12.2 points per game, 7.4 rebounds, and he's only playing about 26 minutes per game. This is his fourth year. He started at Boise, then he went to a JUCO college for 1 year, and now then he came to Southern Florida. So he has at least one more year of eligibility. He hardly played at Boise, so I don't know if any of those years could be considered redshirt years or not. But yeah, he's a kid to watch. I think Southern Florida deserves to make the tournament. Computer rankings can go to hell. I think Southern Florida, win or lose the AAC tournament, deserves to be in, especially if they win a game or two. Like if they lost in the finals to Memphis or Florida Atlantic, I mean, come on.
There's no shame in a loss like that. I mean, yeah. I think coming in, we all thought Florida Atlantic was going to kind of run away with this one with Memphis. Well, maybe not run away, but then Memphis.
Well, I think we thought it was going to be Memphis or Florida Atlantic, and then it looked like it was just going to be Florida Atlantic, and we kind of ignored Southern Florida.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, I think, again, it's like, how do you punish a team for doing what they're supposed to do? And then now that, they're on the bubble, I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not saying I picked them to go win the whole thing or even get out of the second round, but I mean, they deserve a shot.
Right. So moving on to the Big Sky, they've already announced their tournament's already going, and they've already announced their Player of the Year candidate, and that's Dylan Jones. But I just wanted to bring up the Big Sky because this year, to me, there were 3 players in the running for Player of the Year. And what else do they have in common besides they play in the same conference and we're all Player of the Year candidates? What does Dylan Jones, St. Thomas, and Cedric Coward of Eastern Washington have in common? They have been on HPP, the Hoops Prospects podcast. We had the 3 main candidates for Player of the Year, and I think they got it right with Dylan Jones. Totally. I think all 3 of these guys are pro prospects, but I think, Dylan is like in the 50s on our draft board. He's the highest one we have rated, and yeah, they got it right.
Yeah, I got the chance to see Dylan Jones very early in the year live when he absolutely torched St. Mary's at St. Mary's. This dude's awesome. He's really awesome to watch play. He plays super hard. He's an absolute monster on the boards. I had known about him, but when I got a chance to see him live, and again, this was months ago. This was I think their second game, maybe third game of the season, but it was at St. Mary's against a team that people have pretty high expectations for. He went in there and was a man amongst boys. So I know he had that big 30-point, 23 rebound game against Northern Colorado. He wasn't super efficient, but still, to go pull down 23 boards in a game and score 30. in an overtime game, man. Sometimes basketball just boils down to you got to hoop. I know that's a really like basic way to put it, but sometimes throw the metrics out the window every once in a while and all the stats and just go give me a bucket.
Say those numbers again out loud.
30 points and 23 boards, like
and 9 assists.
And 9 assists. I mean, yeah, and 9 assists. I don't know. There's an argument to be made that might be the best individual stat line of the year.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I have to look obviously and pull back the books, but like I would wager that if that is up there, no doubt, for the best individual stat line of the year. So
and
shout out Dylan Jones.
That was just a couple days after we interviewed St. Thomas, who had been putting up just, out of this world numbers. Both players had. But and believe it or not, Northern Colorado, last time I looked, was still ahead of Weber State in the standings.
I think they are, yeah.
So I think that, the Big Sky is just a wide open race, and we'll be picking the tournament winner later on. All right, so moving on, Big South. And the reason I want to bring friend of the show, Drew Pember, was on last year, and I'm hoping we can get him on this year. Drew is basically putting up similar numbers to last year, and he was just lighting it up in all different ways. This is a kid who started off at Tennessee, wasn't getting playing time, then went to the Big South, and he's just been dominating that conference, offensively, defensively. I mean, I think maybe for 2 consecutive years now, I think this is the 3rd consecutive year he's won Player of the Year, but I also think he's won the Defensive Player of the Year at least once, because he also blocks a fair amount of shots. But here's what I'm going to say about Drew Pember. Drew Pember is putting up equal or better numbers this year. And last year, this is what always bugs me about certain people's draft boards. Last year, he was flavor of the month, and he was showing up on people's draft boards. This year, he's doing the same, if not better. He's on no one's board except for ours. And we basically have him in the same place we've had him for 2 or 3 years, which is right around 100. So he's right on the edge of getting into the top 200. Why last year was he a top 100 player and this year nobody talks about him? Because he's not the flavor of the month. And why do people do that? Because they want to throw out names and they hope they stick. And nobody remembers, they had Drew Pember on last year. He must have gotten hurt or something, right? No. Drew Pember's doing the same thing he did last year.
Well, look, it's easy. It's I think what it is it's an indictment on people who like more or less don't actually believe in him that much, but the stats look good. Like the stats tell you there's something there just looking at a box score, but they don't really see it or they don't really do the time to put the homework in on him. So they throw him out there because to the average basketball fan, if I were to tell you there was a 6'11" player out there who's a 3-time conference player of the year, defensive player of the year, averaging 20 and 8 a game, I just gave you that raw data. There's going to be people go, oh, that's a sleeper. That guy can play. Like, man, nobody knows about him, but he's got next. And then, he doesn't get drafted or he doesn't come out and he goes back to a smaller school, kind of fades away. And then you find the next guy, like Robbie Avila is the one this year. Everyone's talking about Robbie from Indiana State, putting up big numbers because he's kind of got a quirky look to him. And again, good team. He's putting up good numbers. But it's like they always kind of find those guys and people are going to be like, this guy's going to be the next Jokic or this guy's 6'11", this guy's a matchup nightmare. And then because they don't play in a big conference or they end up going back for a senior year or whatever, that they just aren't, like you said, they're not the flavor of the month anymore. They're going to look for the next small school.
I'm going to give you an example that blew me away, which was a kid who reclassified, I think, late. And, he's a talented kid, but I don't believe he probably hasn't played 20 minutes this season. And ESPN at one point in time had Freddie, I think it's De Leon, I think, or Dylan, it's Dillione. Is that De Leon? I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm not.
Anyway, he's a kid that reclassified, top 50, 4-star, joins Tennessee late. We know Tennessee Rick Barnes doesn't play freshman. unless he absolutely has to. ESPN had him in their top 100. And this was like when the season was going on. And I'm like, what are you doing? This guy's not even sniffing the court, but just in case, this is of course when Ziegler was still not really up to speed. So maybe ESPN thought he's going to get in the court, and maybe they thought playing for, a top 10 team and the kid's talented, and maybe if he hits it big, and then they're looking like geniuses.
Yeah, we have this conversation all the time. I think that's what it is. It's like you could throw these names out of a kid who, has either the athletic profile or, like I said, the small school legend that if Drew Pember were to come out last year and somebody had him made some state claim, I'm taking him 30th overall. That's how much I believe in Drew Pember, because I saw the numbers and he does go, you've just made your name for yourself. We know how sports works. You are in pretty much all the sports. There's a lot of people who are able to kind of capitalize and jump on one-hit wonders. I mean, look at Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is still getting these high-profile championship caliber team coaching jobs for a championship he won getting close to a decade ago with 4 Hall of Famers on the team, and has done nothing since. And has so just it is kind of frustrating because Drew gets kind of the short end of that stick where he's on board. People are talking about him for themselves. He doesn't, give them the bump that they wanted because he doesn't come out or doesn't get drafted. And now it's just, okay. Nobody wants to wait. Nobody wants to wait and have a guy do the G League route. Maybe have to play 2 or 3 years in the G League before they pop. I mean,
that's why we rank 1,200 players, and that's why we don't react greatly, because if we have a guy at 400, just because he has 2 straight good games, we're not going to all of a sudden put him in the top 50. But it seems like when these guys get toward the end of their draft board, they're like, what name could I throw out there that might just turn into something special? And I could say that I was the first one to have on my draft board, Well,
I also think there's a lot of draft boards out there that people do 60 players. That's it. They do 60 players. And I think what people kind of forget sometimes is when you really get down to it, that 40th to 100th guy, how big is the gap really? A lot of times you might have the difference of,
That's true. And
I think so. That's something too. It's you got you have to go crazy and go super in depth, because really, what is the difference between player number 45 and player number 82? And there could be a difference, but it might be one guy played in a higher conference.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why we go so deep is because we work with European teams, and
absolutely,
and they're not going to be taking the top 60.
Exactly. Yeah, those guys are getting in the 80s to 200.
Well, actually, not even that. I mean, I would say probably the top 125 guys, when our draft board's all set, are all going to be G League or NBA.
Sure.
And then it's 126 on down. That's when it starts. European starts jumping in. All right, so let's move on to the Big West. I don't know who's going to win the Big West MVP because this conference is pretty much, Irvine has pretty much dominated all year. The team that we thought would dominate it, of course, was Santa Barbara, but they're not. And their star player, we also thought would win Player of the Year, and that's who I'm going to talk about, AJ Mitchell. Just quickly, AJ's actually been struggling this year. He started the year by missing a bunch of games. I think he missed 5 games or so, and I think he was slow coming back. He wasn't hitting on all cylinders, and then I think he was sidelined later by an illness. But he's still having a really, really good season. And this guy is definitely a top 100 prospect. Originally from Belgium, he caught my eye in Europe, actually, before he even signed with Santa Barbara. I looking through young prospects in Europe. I'm like, oh, this guy's a good player. And he kind of surprised me by going to Santa Barbara, because I thought he could have gone to a bigger school, because he really was putting up really nice numbers in Europe. But this year, despite not being 100% a lot of the time, still averaged 20 points per game, 51% from the field, 40% from deep, four assists a game, 4 rebounds a game. He's 6'5", combo guard, point guard. So AJ Mitchell is the guy to keep an eye on, either to maybe come out this year or at least test the waters. maybe move to a bigger school. All right, so moving on, and this one pisses me off to no end. To me, in the CAA, and that's what used to be the Colonial Athletic Association, now the Coastal Athletic Association. To me, there was one player, two players that should have won this award, and they didn't choose either. They chose Tyler Thomas. And actually, if you look around in some draft boards, you'll actually see Tyler Thomas's name. I like Tyler Thomas, but I don't love him as an NBA prospect. The two guys I thought it should have come down to was, I mean, Charleston's been the best team in the CAA, but they do it by committee. No standouts on the Charleston roster. The second best team in the CAA has probably been Drexel, and I love their center, Amari Williams, who we had on the show. Excellent shot blocker, good rim runner. And the other guy I really like as a potential pro prospect is Tyler Thomas's teammate. And I'm going to screw up his name, I know. Darlin Stone, that's all one word, Dubar. He's 22. He's a fourth-year guy, so he can play one more year. But if you watch that Hofstra Duke game, if you remember back then, Hofstra really struggled at times, and there was only one guy that consistently scored for them, and that was Dubar. This guy on the season, 18 points per game, almost 7 rebounds a game, 1.5 assists, over 1 steal a game, and almost a block per game. He does it in all different ways. He's bigger than Thomas. He's like 6'8", 215 or so. This guy, to me, has pro potential more so than Thomas. And he didn't win the Player of the Year award, and you certainly could have argued he was the most productive player in the conference too. So, yeah, people just seem to really like Tyler Thomas. Maybe it's that Hofstra guard thing. You know, Hofstra always seems to have one guard on the team that averages 20-some points per game and or more, you know, going back to Speedy Claxton days, who now is the head coach there. So Tyler Thomas is a great scorer, but I think Dubar just has more all-around ability. He's much bigger. All right. So CUSA, to me, Louisiana Tech has been the best team in that conference, and the best player on that conference to me is Isaiah Crawford. They should make the tournament, but they're going to have to win their conference to get in. But Isaiah Crawford on the season, 16.5 points per game, 50% from the field, 40% from deep, 73 from the line. He's throwing in 6 rebounds a game, 2.5 assists, 2.1 steals, and 1.7 blocks. So he's probably also a defensive player of the year candidate. But if for some reason Louisiana Tech doesn't make the tournament, if they do, by the way, they also have Daniel Bacho and Devin Ree, who's a former 4-star. Watch out for Louisiana Tech if you have to play them. Because they got some real, I mean, these are guys who could star at like Wake Forest. Or at least be good starters at Wake Forest. And Isaiah Crawford to me is the best draft prospect in CUSA. And so keep an eye out for him. I'm doing all the talking here, Drew.
I'm just not super familiar with these conferences, to be honest.
We only have a few more. I'm going to we mentioned Tristan Honora, a former Kansas player, Horizon. So Cleveland State, last we heard, is still alive. Tristan Honora is a long wing. To me, should be I thought that Trey Townsend of Oakland, who was the best team in Horizon this year, would probably win the award. But I think Tristan Honora, I don't know if you want to call him a wing or a small forward, because he could pretty much play anywhere 2 through 4 for you. But he's really been putting up big numbers. Cade Pierce, I think, should win Ivy League Player of the Year, though his teammate Xavier Lee. I think both of these guys are pro prospects. I also think both of them are not close to being ready for the NBA. I think you're going to see them both play 4 years at Princeton. They're both sophomores. Zaven Lee is a point guard. Caden Pierce is a power forward. To me, Pierce has been the steadier, more productive, where Lee is the more flashy player. One of those two guys is going to win the award. Keep an eye on Princeton. Hopefully they will continue to win, because I think they are the best team in the Ivy. And I think just like last year, this team actually might be better than last year, Drew. And Princeton went to the Sweet 16 last year. I mean, Zaven Lee was basically not much of a factor last year. And so they have a lot of the guys back who took them to the Sweet 16. Plus, now they have another pro prospect on the team. All right. In the MAC, Enrique Freeman is probably going to win it. He's a former walk-on. He went to Akron as a student. He's just a student who's 6'7". And somebody saw him, I think, playing like pickup games or whatever. You know, somebody on the basketball team said, "Hey, would you like to try out for the basketball team?" And now he's probably going to be most valuable player in the MAC this year. We'll talk about him more when we have Dante Maddox on the show. So let's move on to the Missouri Valley Conference. I know you've become a fan of the Missouri Valley. And I want to ask you, who do you really think should win in the Robbie Avila of Indiana State, who now has the nickname? Are you ready for this? Have you heard this? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Oh man.
And also, of course, Tucker DeVries. Now, these teams have been fighting all year for first place. I'm not even sure who won it. Has it been determined who's the regular season title? Or I
don't think so. I think Drake's in the driver's seat, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think they each have one more game to play, right?
Yeah, I
Oh wait, no, maybe not. Oh, DeVries won it. Oh, so
no, they're in top. No, they are in. They just had they just today. Today was the first
day.
Drake won their matchup today.
They have a great name for that tournament, by the way, because it's always played in St. Louis, and the whole conference kind of is around it.
Arch Madness.
Awesome, yeah. Awesome. So, what do you think about DeVries getting the award over Robbie?
I'm not super mad at it. I think these were the two guys that were kind of like clearly. So like this was the 1-2. Like if it was one, it was going to be one of these two guys. There was no dark horse. I don't think you can be really mad at it. I mean, I think Robbie's the reason I actually started watching the conference a little bit more, to be honest, because he's like classic college basketball legend written all over him.
You know, I think he's legally blind, by the way, is why he wears those goggles.
Interesting. That I did not know.
Yeah, a basketball player who's legally blind
and is good. And is like good on a good, like they're a good team. I got more and more interested in I'll be honest, I really only watched Drake and Indiana State play now. Like those are the only two teams I've seen at all this year from that conference. Well, and whoever they played, but I don't remember.
I've seen Belmont because Belmont has a sophomore class. Watch out for Belmont next year. They are going to be wicked.
Yeah. I'm not mad that Tucker got it. I mean, I think when you have a guy average 22 and 7 a game, like you can't tell me, and they're in their driver's seat. And this is a situation, again, I go back to the WCC awards where you have two guys that, in my opinion, are really close, and the teams are like right there. Like they did finish within the 1-2. I'm not really mad at Tucker getting. This is a situation where I go, the deciding factor should be, because I believe Drake did win the conference. The winner gets the award in this one. I think it was a 1-2 horse race, and I have no problem with Tucker.
Yeah. I mean, DeVries is so much more of a one-man show.
Yes.
And the fact that they still could equal the record of Indiana State, who has like 5, their whole starting lineup are really good. I mean, anyone in Indiana State's starting lineup could put up 15 to 20 a night.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
And so DeVries has had to do it so much more on his own. I get it. I am rooting for Indiana State to win that tournament. To me, they just have more weapons, more balance. And I think they have more potential to make a longer run in the tournament. And I also think it would be a shame, you know, I don't know. I just kind of fell in love with this team. I think everyone kind of has with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so nothing against Tucker DeVries and Drake. I think Tucker deserved the award, but I'd like to see Indiana State in the tournament.
This team gives me some kind of like those like Loyola Chicago vibes.
Yes.
Now I
Yes.
think on the other end, that Loyola Chicago team could defend really, really, really well.
Yeah,
Whereas
right.
this team is more on they flipped out there offensively. Like you said, they got 5 guys that all of them can score in double figures at any night, and one or two of them can go for 20, and now you're in trouble. But this is the vibe I kind of get where there's that mid-major team. They've been around, like they've played together. They've got 5 guys who are kind of on the same page. They have like their star player, kind of like how they had Cameron Kurtwig back on those teams, who was a little more unorthodox of a player.
Yep.
They could be dangerous. I wouldn't be surprised if they went on again on a 2-3 game win streak in a tournament, and if they get hot at the right time, and that can make things very, very
most definitely.
interesting.
And you know, just like Florida Atlantic, everything kind of fell in place. Started with Purdue losing in their region, you know, and then a couple other teams that were supposed to got upset in that region. Princeton was in that region, I believe. And so, you know, you need everything to fall into place, but that's why it happens. That's how Loyola gets to the Final Four. Anyway, we'll move on to, and I'm losing my to the Ohio Valley Conference. And, you know, really the Ohio Valley hasn't been relevant since Ja Morant left the conference. Back then, you know, it was hot thing, you know, to watch the Ohio Valley, but a lot of teams left for the Missouri Valley, including Murray State. And Ohio Valley is just kind of hurting right now, but Morehead State's kind of been the best team in that conference since. This is a school that produced Janiah Broome. Now, they have a fifth-year guy out there this year named Riley Minix, who I think should be Player of the Year. This is going to be his final year, so he will be in the draft. I don't think he has the athleticism to make it in the NBA, but certainly a player that could do very, very well in Europe. He's averaging 14 points per game. I should give you his measurements because he's a shooting big. He's 6'7", but he's 230, solid, good rebounder, brings back 10 rebounds per game. And he's shooting 34 from deep, 55 on the inside, over a steal and a block per game. Also a pretty decent passer at 2.3 a game for assists. You're going to probably see Riley in the NCAA tournament, and he did win the award. Drew put that in there.
Yep, he won the award.
So yeah, and I think Morehead's the clear favorite to win the Ohio Valley tournament. So I think you're going to see Riley in the NCAAs. So, all right, Sun Belt Conference. They got some good teams in there this year, and the team I picked to win was the team Andre Cabello was joining, but he missed most of the year with injuries and or the NCAA stuff about the multiple transfers. And I picked Southern Miss, but they've kind of been middle of the pack team. But what's emerged out of the Sun Belt has been James Madison, Appalachian State, and Troy is not far behind. And the winner of the award went to Terrence Edwards. Now, I won't go into depth about who I thought should win the award, but I will say I thought Trayvon Spillers, who was on our show just recently, excellent defender, excellent rebounder. Appalachian State was the regular season champ, so the best team in that conference. They beat James Madison twice. They played twice. App State won both times. So they went to Terrence Edwards of James Madison. I thought Trayvon Spillers should have won it. And I think he too is NBA prospects. Got to work on the offense, but he's got the rim running, the transition game, the rebounding, the shot blocking. That's all there. All right. The next guy we're going to talk about was on our show today, Tyon Grant-Foster. And I too believe that he's the hands down pick to win Player of the Year in the WAC for the team who clearly was the best team in the WAC.
Yep, I agree. I saw him destroy USF early in the year, absolutely destroy them. Basically, they couldn't stop him. He had like 30 points, 7 boards, hit 3 threes. Was like the best player. He wasn't as great against. I watched them play San Diego State, which they did win in that game. That was an upset. Offensively, he wasn't super sharp, but he kind of chipped in other ways. He had 5 assists. He had 5 boards. I think he had like 2 steals, 2 blocks, if I'm not mistaken. Like I've seen him play. Those are like the two big games, and then I've caught some of their games like just here and there. Like if the game's on, I'll turn one on. I saw them play their overtime game against Seattle U. He didn't really he didn't really like do anything great that game, but he had 15 points, efficient, was like 54% from the floor. And every time I've caught them play, and I've seen them play, I think 4 times this year, he's always stood out as, if not the best guy on the court, like playing good. You know, no, like it wasn't a letdown game. And I'm sure there were a few in there, but every time I saw them play 4 times, and I saw their two, you could probably argue their 2 best opponents in terms of pedigree, which was USF and San Diego this year. And he was the best player.
San Diego State.
He was the best player against USF to me by far in that game. And then in San Diego State, while he offensively wasn't super sharp, still impacted the game in a lot of ways. So, I think this is one's that hands down, and they've been really good. They lost 3 games in conference. They had a little bit of a hiccup where they lost back-to-back at Tarleton, at Abilene. But outside of that, they had the one loss. They've lost 3 games in conference, and he's been averaging almost 20 a game. I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, I don't want to get you all riled up again. We're gonna end with
This
the
is my second win. This is
no. We don't have time for another rant. But Augustus Marshallonis, we both agree, had a good year, but wasn't really player of the year type of candidate. I thought it could have been. I would have been happy with Magobo, Ike, or Anton Watson personally. But what I wanted to do is, because Graham Ike has just been on a roll, I just wanted you to talk about him and what do you think. We have him right on the edge of our top 200, maybe around 220. I wanted to know what you think about his pro potential.
Ike is very hard to judge as a pro. I think the best way to look at this is go, Drew Timme did not get drafted, is in the G League, actually got hurt, unfortunately, so was playing very well in the G League, but did get hurt, so his season is done for the year right now. And I go, if a guy like Drew Timme, with the pedigree, the success on the biggest stage, it's unquestioned resume, one of the best college basketball players the last couple of years, wasn't draftable. I just don't know about Ike. Now, I love
Don't you think Ike's a little more athletic?
He has the better body and athleticism, but I still worry about his game is just like it's all in the post. Now, he has shown a willingness to step out and shoot a little bit earlier in the year.
But that's not a pretty sight.
But it's not a pretty sight. It's a very slow release. And outside of that Purdue game, he basically isn't shooting from 3. Like that game was an outlier. And I honestly think that there was a bit of their strategy to try to pull Edey away from the basket. Because if you take that game away, he attempted 6 threes. He might only have like 9 the rest of, not even. He might have 6 3 attempts the rest of the year outside of that game. So I love Graham. I think he's mentally made of the right stuff. I think he's an absolute competitor. I think he is a great athlete. He runs the floor well for somebody that big, especially somebody coming off a lower body injury that kept him out for 18 months. He's turned himself into an elite free throw shooter, which is something that I think even Timme struggled with at times. Timme was in the high 60s. Graham this year is, I think, in the 80s. I think he's roughly around 80, 81%. I do think he's a great finisher around the basket. Comeback. He needs to develop a better feel as a passer. He's a bit of a black hole. He's a la kind of early Drew Timme in that sense, where Timme was get the ball, I'm going to score. Graham is very much so in that role. And while I understand that, especially in WC, there's nobody who can guard him one-on-one, he hasn't shown at least a willingness to pass. So I think this is a comeback for one more year. Continue to show that the free throw line was not a fluke and that you can shoot at least in the high 70s consistently. Work as a passer. And I think there's definitely a G League spot, a summer league spot. I just don't know if his style of basketball is so anti what the NBA wants to do,
right,
that I just don't know if there's a spot for him in the NBA. And I love Graham. Like I said, I think he's made of the right stuff. He has shown up against big opponents. But I think Graham Ike is the perfect example of a guy who, if he goes overseas, is going to can have a very good career, where his style of play is a little bit more featured. Because I just think it's too late, and even like he said, his jump shot slow. I think there's too many things that you probably can't change in time to change his draft outlook. If he was like a freshman or even a sophomore, I'd be like, hey, he's shown a willingness. The free throw touch is there. He's got not a bad mid range, but it's just so slow. So come back.
If he was a better shot blocker, he might have a chance.
Yes, absolutely. So I think right on that edge of that 200 is legit. I think this is a guy that's going to find his way to pro basketball because I do think he loves the game. I think he's a competitor, but I think his story is going to be 2 years at Gonzaga, carry that team as far as he can, establish himself as the next great kind of Zag transfer. There's been a lot of them. And he'll obviously try his hand at the league, but I think he's going to be more of a European style player. But absolutely robbed for player of the year, and I will not get on that soapbox. I'll just leave it at that. But I do love Graham. I love him. I know that when they came in, I was higher on him coming in than you were. But again, I think you were looking at it more from the pro side. I was looking at it more from he's the perfect guy to fill the Drew Timme role because their games are so similar.
Well, he's gotten a lot better too since his last year at Wyoming. Because at Wyoming, if you remember, like in the first when Wyoming got their butt kicked the last year he played there, he had trouble finishing against size. You know,
they played Indiana in that. Was it Indiana in that first 4 game? I think because it was him and Hunter Maldonado.
Maldonado had the all-time worst game I've ever seen.
You know, you want to know a fun fact? That was the first conversation we ever had. Was the day after that game when we did like a little interview, and the interview just boiled down to us breaking down that game, and we've had a beautiful partnership ever since. But that sticks in my head because we both were like DK Maldonado.
I had been actually following because their 3-point marksman on that Wyoming team was supposed to be on the show, so I had been prepping, watching some Wyoming games. He actually never showed, I don't believe. I forget his name even. I think he's in the G League. But anyway. So I have been watching a lot of Wyoming. Oh, he was supposed to be on the show like in between. I don't know. But anyway, I was rooting for Wyoming to win because he was going to be on the show. And I can remember just being so angry how Maldonado played. And I wasn't too pleased with EK either.
Yeah. He has gotten better though. And I think that it's a testament to the character, which I think is a plus. Because struggled, kind of relied more on just physical strength, athleticism, gets injured, comes back, steps up his competition level. And, I think has been awesome. I mean, he's been awesome this year. I mean, outside of the UConn game against UConn and the game where he got into bad foul trouble against Santa Clara when they lost those 2 games, I think he's been awesome this year. And very happy he's in the Zags uniform. And I think his revenge tour for the player of the year, if they're still in WCC, is going to be pretty awesome next year to watch.
Right. All right. So now we're going to move on to our picks of the week. And, people think that we mainly have not been doing the regular show because we've been doing all these interviews. But the fact of the matter is we've been in training. It's been intense training to improve our picks of the week because we've been dreadful this year. And you know what, Drew? When I was scoring our last show, I was like, oh my God, we're finally going to have a good week. And we were doing great all the way through Saturday. Then I got to Sunday. There were 6 games on Sunday that week. We each went 1-5 on Sunday to just to destroy our week. And so you finished the last show at 15-11. I was 16-10. I am leading by you. I'm beating you by a 0.5 of a decimal point. You were at 57.4%. I'm at 57.9. So now today we have a little different take because we're going to be picking the conference championships, and we're going to be using a little bit of different rules because some of these games, if there are multiple games, what we're going to do is this will probably apply more next week, but it will apply some this week, is if you pick a team, you get their wins and losses. So, for example, if you say maybe pick Boston College in the ACC tournament, you might have a chance to get as many as 5 wins, assuming they win 5 games. But if you pick the team and they do not finish in the finals, you get an extra loss. So everybody's going to get 1 loss unless they win. But if you pick the teams and they don't lose in the final, you get an extra loss. So now with the A-Sun, we're going to pick the A-Sun right now, and it's pretty simple because there's only one game. They're down to one game. And as you said earlier, it's down to Stetson and Austin P, the second seed versus the fourth seed. And as I mentioned before, one seed, Eastern Kentucky, who had basically dominated this conference and was our preseason pick to win the conference, promptly lost to 10th seed Jacksonville in the first round.
It's March. It's March, Rich. Gotta get started. I mean, I'll go first. I said earlier, some of these really small conferences I'm not super plugged into.
Neither am I. Whoops.
I'll take
put my
Stetson.
pick in your bots.
I'll take Stetson.
Yes. Stetson has a couple of players on our draft board. And they have the higher seed. I got to go with Stetson. All right. So now we're going to go to the Big Sky. And if what I have, are they? Oh, so they playing next week? Wait,
yeah, they start.
Have they even started? No, they haven't even started.
No. Yep,
all right, so this is interesting. This is interesting. The first seed's Eastern Washington. Oh, okay, right, yeah. Eastern Washington's been leading the conference. Second seed Northern Colorado, third seed Montana, and fourth seed Weber State.
This one's tough because this conference has actually been pretty muddled. It is a West Coast one,
because we thought Weber was going to dominate it.
Yeah, I thought Weber was going to win it. This one's tough. Everyone's got at least 3 losses. I'm going to go with the team that I am going to take Weber. I like Dylan Jones a lot. I personally think he's the best player in the conference. I thought they were the favorite to win this one. This is a West Coast conference, so I'm a little bit more familiar because Sacramento State's in my backyard, and we actually tried to get a kid who was transferring from Northern Colorado to come to Menlo last year. It didn't happen. Or he was transferring out of he was like a bench guy, but so I started following them a little bit more. And then Steel Venters obviously came from here too, who never got to play for the
You're
Tigers.
Going with Eastern Washington. Oh,
I'm gonna go Weber.
Oh, yeah, because Steel Venters came from Eastern Washington.
I was just saying, I actually followed this conference a little bit more recently just because I had a couple different avenues of interest.
I'm going to throw a little monkey wrench in here. And because I think the 3 best teams also feature the 3 best players, which we talked about earlier, I'm going to go with Northern Colorado because Weber and Eastern Washington have to face each other in the next round. I think Northern Colorado gets to the finals. So as much as I think Weber is probably the best team, I'm going to just take our friends at Northern Colorado. Also, their coach, Steve Smiley, is going to come on the show in March.
Shout out, Coach.
So, all right, Coach, I'm picking your team because you're coming on the show. No, I think there's a logic to that, too. All right, so we're going to go to the Big South. And this tournament has already started moving along. Tomorrow they're down to the final 4. So tomorrow it's one seeded High Point against Longwood, 2 seed UNC Asheville against 3 seed Gardner Webb. So we have Asheville featuring Drew Pember against High Point, who's been the clear best team during the regular season.
I'm more familiar with Asheville because of Pember and somebody that we followed. So I'm going to go on a limb and go with the best player in the conference. They only for 1 game behind High Point, and they did finish 21-11 and High Point's 25-7, but in conference play, they were right there. So in these types of situations, if I'm not familiar, I'm going to go with the best guy, and I'll take Pember and Asheville to win.
I am going to go with High Point. I believe this is played in their gym. So that's got to give them some advantage, though all teams are going to have seat, they give out a certain allotment, but but I think it will come down to Asheville and High Point. And part of me wants to root for Asheville because we've had Drew on the show. All right, so now we're going to move to the CAA. A lot of good teams in the CAA. I mean, Hofstra, who has the player of the year, who won it, and the player of the year who I thought won it. Hofstra is only the 3rd seed in this tournament. It's already started, so they're down to 4. We have College of Charleston. This is on Sunday. Charleston will play UNC Wilmington, who's the 4th seed, and Drexel, the 2 seed, will play 3 seed Hofstra. This is being played in Washington, D.C., so nobody really has an advantage there.
I'm going to take Drexel. They got Justin Moore and Amari Williams. There's only 2 players on that team that I know. But I think those 2 kind of lead the way for this team. It's 2 guys that kind of can be that 1A, 1B. I'm going to take Drexel.
That's who I wanted too. Might be my Philly bias, but I'm going to go with Drexel as well. All right, now we're down to the Horizon. By the way, speaking of the Horizon, when we picked Detroit Mercy to end their 25-game losing streak, they did so. Or maybe it was 26 games. I think it was 26 games.
I think it was 26 games.
Yeah, they were 0-26. We picked them to be Indiana at Purdue, and not only did they win, they thumped them.
Yeah. They had a one-man court storm. Did you see that? They had a one guy ran onto came flying out of the stands onto the court and was going crazy.
I did not see that.
That's what the announcers are worried about. That they got to protect Flip from the one-man court storm.
So the Horizon is featuring March Madness already because most of the top seeds have already lost. They're down to 4 teams, and this will pick up on Monday. So we have Cleveland, Oakland, the 1 seed against 7 Cleveland State. We don't know if Anara is playing for Cleveland State. And then we have 5 seed Northern Kentucky against 6 seed Milwaukee, meaning that Youngstown fell to Cleveland State. And I think what they do, by the way, in this tournament, they reseed everybody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because if you notice, Youngstown was on the this side of the bracket.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like they did. And now Cleveland State is up with Oakland.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not familiar with this conference, and if they're going to reseed to give the one a more favorable matchup, I'm going to have to go with Oakland just because looking at this.
They're the only high seed left.
Yeah, they're the only high seed left for a conference I'm not familiar with, and because you reseeded them to give them the more favorable matchup.
Yeah.
I think they at least get to the championship, but this conference clearly doesn't care what anybody thinks and is just going to let chaos reign. So.
Well, I will say, though, if Anara plays,
yes,
it gives Cleveland State a fighting chance because I thought he should have. I think, whether he should have won Player of the Year or not, I think he's the best player in this conference. All right, so now we're going to move on to the Missouri Valley Conference, one of my favorite conferences, mid-major conferences. They too have started. Some of these games are being played tonight. In fact, Indiana State's already advanced and Northern Iowa is already advanced. Drake is supposed to be playing Evansville. That game should be over. You want to check on that score?
Yeah. It looks like Drake won.
And Bradley, Illinois, Chicago.
I think that game is live right now.
Yeah, but it should be close to being at least
I'm trying to pull it up right now. College basketball. And I did misspeak earlier. I said that Drake had won. Indiana State had won the conference. It was a 1-game separated, but I had it flipped.
Right.
Bradley won. Oh, Bradley crushed him.
Yeah, Bradley was our preseason pick to win this conference. So
they crushed him.
Clearly, the cream has risen to the top in Arch Madness. So we have 1 seed Indiana State versus 4 seed Northern Iowa, 2 seed Drake against 3 seed Bradley. Who you got in Arch Madness?
I'm going to take Indiana State because I think we kind of touched on it. I think they have the best starting 5 and arguably the best player. And then they have the easier path. I'm not super familiar with Bradley, but they just put on a clinic. Now, Illinois Chicago was the 11th seed, so it wasn't like they beat any world beaters. But
as I said, we had picked Bradley. They're a big team. They got some big guys in the front line, but their guard play is kind of suspect. All right, so now we're going to. What's that? Yeah, I too am going with Indiana State. So now we move on to the Northeastern Conference. Are you on the edge of your seat, Drew? We have 1 seed Central Connecticut against 6 seed Wagner, and we have 2 seed Merrimack against 4 seed Lemoyne.
Lemoyne. Yeah, that's Lemoyne.
I
Yeah.
think they just joined D1, by the way. So who you got?
I'm gonna take Merrimack.
So am I. What
I'm
made
going
you take
Merrimack.
Merrimack?
I feel like Merrimack's had success in this conference. If I'm not mistaken, this is their first year of tournament eligibility. I believe.
Oh, are they
think,
really?
I think they were in a D2 transition, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And actually, fun fact, the reason Farley Dickinson, yeah, they are. Because the reason Farley Dickinson got to the tournament last year and upset Purdue is because Merrimack wasn't eligible. They won the conference tournament, but they weren't eligible to advance. So I'm just looking at this Merrimack roster. I just did a quick little week. They've got some players. They've got this Jordan Derrick kid who's averaging almost 18 and 6 a game and 4 assists. So he's clearly playing. They've got 3 guys over double digits in scoring with another 2 guys around almost 8 points. I don't know a lot about this team. I'm not going to pretend to, but just kind of looking at a quick box score scan and what this team has done, they're very clearly experienced at winning this tournament, and it looks like they've got the horses to do it.
All righty. I went with Merrimack because I believe the computers like them. You did a lot more. You did a lot more research than I did. No one, I don't think anyone in that conference is on our draft board. So now we move to the Ohio Valley, and I was wrong. I thought Moorhead won this conference. They didn't. They're the 3rd seed. These games are tonight. Oh, so we're down to 2.
So it was a 3-way tie in terms of record. So I'm not sure what their tiebreaker was, but Little Rock, Tennessee, and Moorhead all finished 14-4.
Okay, so who won tonight's games? Because that's what we're down to.
So Little Rock is in the championship. They beat Western Illinois, and Tennessee and Moorhead are playing right now, and I can give you an update on that in 1 second. I think Moorhead was up when I was looking for the Bradley score. I think
so Moorhead's a 3 seed, Tennessee is a 2 seed. So, and we know Little Rock is in. So, what do you got?
I'm going to take Moorhead. I think it's very clear this conference is pretty jumbled at the top. I mean, yeah, obviously has to be a 1, 2, and a 3, but when you're all tied, Moorhead has the most impressive non-conference record, has the more impressive non-conference and overall record. So I'll take them.
Obviously, Little Rock, I got an advantage there. I'm taking them, but it's not the only reason. Moorhead, we have one of their players on our draft board. Little Rock, believe it or not, we have 3 of their players on our draft board. So that's my reasoning there. Now we move on to the Patriots, which has its Final Four plays on Sunday. So it's down to 1 seed Colgate against 5 seed Bucknell, 2 seed Boston U against 6 seed Lehigh.
Oh, boy.
And I believe Colgate has dominated this conference. I mean, traditionally, not just traditionally, but I think this year they won by at least a couple of games.
Yeah, they won by 6 games.
Wow.
Because there was a 4-way tie. Looking at it, looks like there's a 4-way tie for second, at least in terms of like performance. There was 4 teams at 10-8 and 1 team at 9-9. So it's pretty jumbled. They were 16-2. So going in this pretty inexperienced, I'm taking Colgate because looking at the records of every other team in this conference, every single team was under. There were 2 teams that were 500. Everyone else was well under 500, and then Colgate was 23-9 on the year. So give me Colgate.
All right. I got to agree. Colgate's been dominating this conference for quite some time. Yeah, they were one of the 10. I mentioned those 10 teams we pointed out of the conferences we didn't preview. Colgate was one of them. So we've been on them since the start. So the SoCon tournament, or sometimes known as the Southern tournament, is actually kicks into full gear tomorrow. There's still 8 teams left, including 1 seed Samford, 2 seed Greensboro, 3 seed Chattanooga. I also know Furman, even though they're a 5 seed, is a very good team. Western Carolina's had a good year. We definitely have players from this conference on our draft board. Pretty much from every team I mentioned. Yeah, from every team we mentioned. This is a good conference, an underrated conference.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm not really sure here. I'll take Samford. I'll take the 1 seed. Just kind of looking at it, they've been the best team. But yeah, like this has been a pretty close conference. You got 4 teams with 20 wins on the year. That speaks volumes. So I'll take Samford, and that's mostly coming from just being kind of ignorant to what the rest of the team has to offer.
Right.
I was more aware of Chattanooga in the past because Gonzaga had pulled Malachi Smith from there, and they had went on a little bit of a tournament run. But this year, not super familiar with what they've got going on. So I'll take Samford with a 26-5 overall record.
I saw actually these two. The team I'm picking is Greensboro. I saw them play against each other, Samford and Greensboro. They're both solid teams. I don't think they're going to do a tremendous amount of damage in the tournament, but I think Greensboro beat Arkansas earlier this year.
Yes, they did.
So I'm going to go with Greensboro. All right, so now we're down to the Southland Conference, and they have yet to start 2. They begin on Sunday. So we have 1 seed McNeese, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi was, I think, the second best team in that conference, or the 2 seed. And both McNeese and Corpus Christi have 2 byes. So they have the 1 and 2 seeds getting 2 byes.
Yeah, this conference, it's kind of crap.
Well, not McNeese.
Well, I was gonna say that's why I'm taking McNeese, because they're the one team that has shown that they are head and shoulders above everyone else in this conference.
Yes, they're head and shoulders above, and I think they could win a game in the tournament.
Yes, no, I was gonna, yeah, I think that I don't think there's anyone here that can really challenge them. Now, obviously, it's March; you never know what happens, but I think they have proven to be, in the driver's seat until further notice.
All right, so we have the Summit that's only had the play-in game so far, and Oral Roberts beat South Dakota to get into the final 8. We have 1 seed South Dakota State, 2 seed Kansas City, 3 seed North Dakota. I haven't seen any Summit League games this year. Just they don't have the talent that they usually do. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I actually know the director of operations over at Denver. So, Mike, if you're listening.
Actually, we have a couple of guys on our draft board from Denver.
Their Dobo was actually the lead assistant at Menlo last year, and was an assistant coach with my dad at the JC level a couple years ago. So, Mike Orlich, if you're listening, hope all is well, man. Best of luck in the tournament. I got love for you, but I'm not going to be rocking with you guys. I'm going to have to take South Dakota State. Again, that's more of just an indictment on me not being super well versed. They've been one of the better teams in the conference for a while, though. That we do know.
Yeah.
That's pretty known. And again, they had a good 12-4 in conference play. And 19 wins, 12 losses isn't great. We've seen them win 20 games before, but from what I'm seeing, they've kind of separated themselves at least as the best team as it stands.
Right. So we have the Sun Belt, which is down to 8 at this point. Appalachian State 1 seed still alive. They play 9 seed Georgia Southern, 4 seed Arkansas State against 5 seed Louisiana, 2 seed James Madison against 10 seed Marshall, 3 seed Troy against 11 Texas State. Looks like everything's holding. The top 4 seeds are there. This tournament, by the way, is being played in Florida, so it doesn't look like anybody really has an advantage.
I'm going to take James Madison. I've seen them play the most. I know Appalachia has had their number this year. They've had 3 losses, and Appalachian State's given them 2. But I'm going to go with James Madison, and that mostly comes from I think they've both been right there neck and neck. They both put together awesome seasons as a whole. 26-5 for Appalachian State, 28-3 for James Madison. I'm going to go on the old adage, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. And so I'm going to take Madison, but I think that those 2 teams are really, really awesome. Like I said, I've seen Madison play a couple of times. They've been great. And Troy's kind of sneaky there too. They've had a good run as well. 20 wins, 11 losses on the year, and a 13-5 conference record with good competition in the conference is nice to see, but I'll take James Madison.
Yeah. The Sun Belt's been a very nice, pleasant surprise. By the way, Southern Miss is already out of the running. Was my preseason pick, but things just didn't work out very well with Corbello. Not to anything that he did, but anyway, I'm going to go with App State. Yeah. And my boy Trayvon Spillers. All right. So now we're going to move on to what's the last one we have? WCC. Drew.
There's no
Certainly
even need
has
to ask. No need to ask. We all know who I'm going with. I'll ride with that ship until the wheels fall off and we sink into the abyss, man. Give me the Zags. I think it's pretty clear that they have a gear that no other team can match. They have, in my opinion, to be quite honest, the three best players in the conference. I believe Watson, EK, and Nemhard are the 1, 2, and 3, however you want to rank them. And I think they're starting to find their stride and they understand after getting snubbed. I think they put an extra chip on their shoulder.
Right. Yeah. St. Mary's without Jefferson did not look good against the Zags in that last matchup. Of course, the 2 top seeds in this tournament get double buys.
Yes.
I got a favorite just based on the last time these 2 teams met. Gonzaga seems to be red hot, getting better. I'm going to go with Gonzaga. All right. So now we move on to our regular picks of the week. Tomorrow and Sunday, these are the last 2 days of the regular season. And we have some good games. I picked only games with either seeding or bubble implications.
Oh, big matchups.
And we have a hot, believe it or not, and I say hot, Arkansas team against a suddenly stumbling Alabama team. Alabama, of course, is home. Who you got?
Oh, man. I'm going to take Alabama because I think Alabama is home. They are better. I believe they're better, but I mean, I just haven't trusted this Arkansas team all year.
Yeah, but they are finally.
But they are playing better.
Finally seem to put it together.
For
All right,
sure.
we got Memphis, and I think if Memphis wins this game, they certainly are going to be much more in the bubble discussion. At Florida Atlantic.
I like Florida Atlantic. I've liked Florida Atlantic. I know that they've been kind of up and down all year, but I think this is a team that is super talented, but is kind of in that San Diego State boat where it's like they went on such a great run last year and kind of caught some people by surprise in terms of like overachieved to what the general public thought, that this is more in line with what they are, which is still like a 20-plus win team, only 7 losses, have good wins on the year, but they're not these undefeated world beaters. I can't trust this Memphis team worth a damn, in my opinion. So give me the Owls.
No, the last time we did picks, Memphis, I think, was playing SMU. You went with SMU. I went for Memphis. SMU won by like 20 points. Yeah. Florida Atlantic's the better team. I mean, Memphis theoretically could be the better team, but they just don't.
Yes. That's been the Memphis story for the last 3 years.
So this next game is kind of must see because it's these two teams might be fighting for the last spot in the Big 12 to get in the tournament. That's Oklahoma at Texas. Both teams, as we mentioned earlier in the show, have a starter that's questionable for the game.
Give me Texas. I'm gonna roll with them. I think Texas is the better team, and if Dessou does go, I know Texas is the better team. So
yeah,
I'm gonna take the home team with a chance to have Dessou play.
At full strength, I think Texas is the better team, and they're home.
Yeah.
All right, more bubble teams in the SEC. We have A&M at Ole Miss. I don't like either of these teams. Ole Miss has been disappointing, and A&M sometimes can't throw it in the ocean.
I gave Ole Miss a lot of benefit of the doubt earlier in the year. There's a couple of times I think we picked them where I was like, hey, they've been right there.
Yeah, they've had opportunity after opportunity. They always come up short. But A&M, there's a lot of things not to like about them. I don't, to be honest, I don't think either of these teams deserve to be in the tournament. And I hope they're not.
I'm going to take Ole Miss pretty much exclusively because they're at home, but I don't think neither of these teams are overly impressive.
Yep, I agree. I'm going with Mississippi because they're home. All right, now we have number 10 Creighton at Villanova. Villanova may need this win to get in.
I'm taking Creighton. They're starting to play better and better. They're starting to look like the Creighton team I think we expected early on. I stand by something I said earlier in the year is I don't know how many teams have a better starting 5 than these guys, and I stick by that. On any given night, especially with Ashworth starting to really find more of his footing and really kind of start to figure it out and understand what his role is there. He's been playing a lot better, which I think has elevated them because Kalkbrenner, Scheidemann, and Alexander have been pretty much good all year, but now the other guys are starting to learn how to play with and around those guys. So give me the Blue Jays.
Right. I think Villanova's only hope is Creighton somehow looking ahead to the Big East tournament.
Yes.
But I'm going Creighton. All right. We got number 17, South Carolina. Seems to be a lock now to get in the tournament against bubble team Mississippi State.
I'm going to take Mississippi State. This is kind of a funny one.
I'm laughing because we're thinking a lot alike today.
Yeah, like I think that this game does matter more to Mississippi State in terms of their chances of getting in. So I think there's that level of they're going to have to bring it. And the computers like Mississippi State more too, by actually a pretty decent margin.
I like them better. I mean, I still don't know how South Carolina's doing it. I mean, they just kind of muck it up, kind of like Virginia used to, and
yes,
and things, you know, that kind of ball. And I can't stand that kind of ball.
I agree. It's one of the reasons why I've never been a St. Mary's guy and I've always been a Zags guy. Is
right.
I think one team plays.
It's a gimmick. It's a gimmick when you don't have talent, and and it's a boring gimmick at that. Reminds me of the old Four Corners. That's way before your time. Look it up. It was horrible. It was horrible. That's why I never liked Dean Smith. I'm serious. It was the worst thing in the world. Look up Four Corners, Dean Smith. Mississippi State, I'm going with here. All right, now we have Kansas, most likely going to be without Kevin McCullough at number 1 Houston.
That right there is why I'm taking Houston. We talked about Houston's depth becoming a bit concerning, but they're at home. And if you take away McCullough, Houston's going to get – it's just one less guy that Houston has to worry about. And if you can become even more – if they're allowed to spend even more time focusing on Hunter defensively, I think they can just find a way to just muck up his game and make him have to earn it. So Houston at home. Will we trust them in the tournament? Different conversation, but in this one –
yeah. It's also a revenge game. Houston wants to keep that one line seeding. I got to go with Houston. Speaking of one line seeding, Tennessee's now moved up. Most experts are saying as a 1 seed. And visitors number 15, Kentucky comes to town.
I really like this Tennessee team. I know since we've been working together, Rich, Tennessee's always been a team that we've always been in that but. Because there's always something that's held us back a little bit. I think this is a year where they look really good. I've seen them play a lot this year, and every time it's it's not just the defense. It's Dalton going for 20 or Zakai Ziegler starting to look like Zakai Ziegler again. So I think this Tennessee team is legit, and I know they were fighting with Arizona for that last one. I don't think it's close. I think Tennessee's a much better team. Yeah, more consistent. So give me the Vols.
Yep. I like the Volunteers here as well. I have all the respect in the world for this Kentucky team. But if Tennessee wasn't fighting for a 1 seed, I might think longer and harder about Kentucky. But the fact that they really need to keep on winning, they can't afford to lose if they want to be that 1 seed. I think they're going to be motivated, and they're home. All right. We have number 11 Baylor at Texas Tech.
I like this Baylor team. This is one of my favorite kind of sleeper teams in the country. I think this team is super talented. I think they've got a lot of really good guard play. Baylor is probably, I know it's kind of cheating because they're number 11, but they're probably my favorite team outside of the top 10 by a pretty wide margin. I know that's kind of cheating, but I would mean that they were like 16 or 17. I would still I really like this Baylor team.
I would like to reword that. They're probably my least favorite team in the top 11. Just joking. I like Baylor in this game. I like Baylor in the tournament. Texas Tech is kind of doing a little bit with smoke and mirrors. Their offense is very inconsistent. I like Baylor. All right. Wake Forest might be their last chance, last gasp for them. Clemson at Wake Forest.
I'm going to take Wake Forest. I'm going to bank on them seizing the moment. They've been really good at home. They haven't been great away from home. And I think they have to win this game. If they want to remain even remotely in the discussion, this is like a must win for them because Clemson's been solid all year. They're not as ranked as they were before, but I think this is Wake Forest. They have to get this win.
Yeah, they do. They do. They had to get the previous one too. I watched that game. Who'd they play the other night where they should have won?
They just lost to Georgia Tech.
Yeah. They lost to Georgia Tech at home.
They lost to Georgia Tech at home. And then they lost to Virginia Tech And they've lost 3 in a row. They lost to Notre Dame,
Yeah.
Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech.
Yeah, you can't lose to Notre Dame and Georgia Tech and think you're going to the tournament.
Yeah.
Clemson's been steady Eddie. I like Clemson on the road. I've liked this Wake Forest team. I've been rooting for them, but man, they just don't seem to know how to deliver the goods. I'm actually starting to wonder is Steve Forbes' job at Wake Forest because he can't get them over
the hump.
This is the third year in a row they've been on the bubble. Third year in a row. And I don't think they're going to make it again.
Yeah. If they lose this, they're out for sure. If they win, I think they have a chance if some stuff falls their way and maybe they make a little bit of a run. But if they lose this, it's over.
Unless they would make a huge run in the tournament. They would have to like beat a Duke and Virginia and probably before then they'd have to beat somebody like, Virginia Tech, for example, who's starting to play well.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have the usual end of the season matchup between number 7 North Carolina at Duke.
I like North Carolina. I think North Carolina is just a more veteran team. I think they're a better team. I think Duke just doesn't really have that dog in them.
Too many freshmen. Too many sophomores and freshmen.
Yeah, versus a team that's all upperclassmen and like 5th year upperclassmen. So
yeah, I got to go with North Carolina to get the sweep too. I just I picked Duke to win it all, and they just they've been good, but just so disappointing at the same time.
They're gonna run into a team in the tournament that's gonna punch them in the face, and instead of standing up and like wiping away the blood, they're gonna cry about needing an amputation, like someone ran into them on a court storm. That's what's going to happen. I feel like it's going to happen.
All right. We have 2 bubble teams in the Pac-12, Utah at Oregon.
This is an interesting
Oregon's finally healthy, by the way.
Yeah.
Except for Biddle and the other guys that were lost for the season. But yeah. But I mean, they haven't lost anybody else. and Dante.
Yeah. Utah looked really good to start the year and kind of petered out, and Oregon just hasn't been able to be healthy all year. So I'm going to take Oregon at home. But again, I don't feel overly great about either of these teams. I'm not.
I think Oregon. I still think Oregon might make a little noise down the stretch. I'm going with Oregon. All right, we have our our Mountain West game of the week. We have New Mexico at Utah State. New Mexico was the team I picked to win this conference, but they have been underachieving to some degree, and they're on the bubble.
This is a good game. I mean, I think both of these teams. I mean, New Mexico's won like 23 games or something like that.
Yeah, they're a very good team, but
they underachieved.
But they're on the bubble. This is the team I thought was going to be the best team in the Mountain West
in the conference. Yeah,
and that right now stands to be Utah State, at least in terms of conference record.
This conference is impossible to pick. These teams
I know it is. It is. You might as well
give me Utah State because they're Utah State at home. I don't. UNLV's beaten like everybody in this conference at least once, and
UNLV's pretty good.
Yeah, but I came into this not thinking they'd be that much of a factor. That this is a deep conference, but I'll take Utah State because they're home. If New Mexico wins this game, I'm not gonna be shocked in the slightest.
Right. And I'm gonna go with New Mexico. It's time for them to get their act together. Come on, and get off that bubble. All right, now we have Minnesota has definitely played a lot better in the second half of this season. They got a couple really good young players. But Northwestern's banged up. Their starting center is not going to play in this game. And Ty Berry, we mentioned in our last show, one of their wings is out for the season.
I'm going to take Minnesota. Minnesota has a guy I went to high school with on the roster, so shout out to Sarah.
All right, you mentioned him before.
Jack Wilson, just an absolute tank of a human being. I think this is more just Northwestern kind of running out of gas as the season goes on.
Right. Yeah, they only played 5 guys.
Yeah, I think that they upset Purdue again, and ever since that moment, it hasn't been a massive off a cliff, but it's just been get banged up, lose a close game, not be able to close, get banged up again, and now it's a team that's starting to go in the other direction. So I'll take Minnesota.
Yeah, I love Minnesota's young center, Farrell Payne. I love Cam Christie, the freshman, and some other good players on that team. Northwestern, I agree, they're just banged up. They're home, but I think Farrell Payne is just going to be really. I watched him destroy Cliff Amore and Rutgers.
Oh yeah, you were at that game.
Well, no, I wasn't at that
Weren't you
game,
at that
but I
game?
mean, it was. I wasn't at that game. I was at Minnesota, but it was soon after I had. It was like right after.
Oh,
it was like
you
the
were
next
you were at Rutgers, right? You
yeah,
were at
yeah.
Rutgers
I went there a couple times this year.
Oh, yeah.
But
I thought
anyway,
that was the one.
Minnesota's got some impressive young pieces. All right, now we have the upset team of the year, UNLV versus Nevada. So, Georgia Tech has to be on that upset team list. They're even crazier because, Georgia Tech could lose to a Division II team and then they'll go out and beat Wake Forest and Duke.
I'll take Nevada. This is another one. I really have no desire to pick Mountain West games because they terrify me for my percentage, but they make for really good, entertaining games. But I'll take Nevada.
I am going with Nevada too because they have been red hot. They are
Yes.
playing great ball.
They strike me as a team that peaking at the right moment. I wouldn't be shocked to see this team somehow win the Mountain West the way they're playing right now, or
Yep.
make a deep run in the playoffs.
They're one game behind. They're one game
Yeah.
behind Utah State, so they could tie them. Yeah. In Nevada, what's been impressive? They've got some impressive road wins this year, so they don't just win at home, and they have a nice home court advantage. All right, lastly, Sunday, we got 3 Sunday games, and then we're done with this show. We got Ohio State at Rutgers, and why is this game on there? Because Ohio State's getting warm. I don't think neither of these teams are bubble teams, but Ohio State could make some noise in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I'm going to take Ohio State. They've been on one ever since I watched them beat Purdue, and I know that was a game a couple of weeks ago, but they've been playing good since
Holtman was fired.
They've rallied behind.
Our last show, they've won 4 of 5 games.
5 games, yeah. So I think what I love about college basketball is this time of the year, sometimes it's about just being the hot team at the right time, and that's what they are right now. So give me Ohio State, give me the Buckeyes.
Right. And we have Michigan State, who just keeps on plodding along, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, against Indiana, who struggled with very little talent at guard. They finally have Xavier Johnson back again, and since he's come back, they're playing well again. So as long as he stays healthy, Indiana is a team to watch out for.
I'm going to take Michigan State. I think there's some stuff going behind the scenes there that there seems to be some kind of dissension. I don't know if you heard about their 5-star recruit who just decommitted.
No.
So Liam McNeely was the number 11 recruit in the upcoming class, I believe. Maybe 10. He was 10 or 11. And he had requested a release from his letter of intent and decommitted from the Hoosiers.
Well, they just announced Woodson was coming back. Are they related?
So people think it's because he doesn't want to play for Woodson because Woodson confirmed his return, and the next day McNeely requested a release.
Well, why would he go there thinking the coach would be fired?
I don't know I don't know. Maybe he signed there. I don't know. All I know is maybe
What
it's just
position does he play?
Ironic. I think he's a forward. I don't know a lot about him. I just
if everybody comes back. If everybody
he's a forward.
Back, if everybody comes back for them, they don't have any room for forwards.
Yeah, so he's 6'8" forward, number 11 prospect on ESPN's top 100 for the coming year, averages 17 and 5 on the EYBL
So he'd
circuit.
almost have to be banking that Khalil Ware is going to go into the draft, which I think he will. But
I think he will. Yeah.
But if he doesn't, there's no room for that kid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's related to Woodson. I think it's just the irony of it's just kind of an ironic timing thing that, he says he's coming back, then he decommits. But yeah, I'll take Michigan State.
Well, I think Mike Woodson's a good coach. I just think that this roster was poorly put together. I think he's gotten best out of Khalil Ware. He didn't have a lot to work with at guard. I'm going to go with IU here. Michigan State is they're just disappointing. Just disappointing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Last game, Iowa needs this. Illinois, I don't know. I mean, obviously, the more they win, the better their seed. So it's Illinois at Iowa.
I just think Illinois is better, so I'm taking Illinois. Like I don't think this is like this isn't like, oh, Iowa sucks, they're terrible. I just think Illinois is just straight up better. So
Illinois is a really, really good team. I'm going to tell you a funny story. I shouldn't say this in public because this makes me doesn't look as smart as I am. But when I picked my Final Four, the fourth team I put in, the fourth team was Connecticut. And I replaced them at the last minute. I had Illinois there. So my Final Four is going to be Michigan State, Duke, Tennessee, Illinois. And I pulled Illinois out at the last minute, replaced it with Connecticut. So that's how much I think of Illinois. So that's also why I picked Brad Underwood to be coach of the year preseason. Yeah. All right. So we're done with the picks of the week. I know the show was long this week, folks, but we hadn't been here for, 3+ weeks to do a regular show. We will be back. Believe it or not, we're not here for 3 weeks. Now we're going to be back in a couple days, Drew. We're going to be back on Monday. We're going to be back on Monday to do the other conferences, but we won't have a lot of this other discussion. Basically, just going to preview the conferences and make our picks. So there should be a briefer show.
Last bit of, I guess, kind of breaking news. Pepperdine just got knocked out of the WCC tournament on a 3. It was they hit a 3 with a couple seconds left on the clock. San Diego hits a 3, knocks them out. Javon Porter is officially in the portal along with Houston Mallet. So wow. Pepperdine's 2 players. Because I think Michael Ajayi, their best player statistic, I think he was done. I think he was a senior, if I'm not mistaken.
Your guy, yeah. Well, so Pepperdine underachieved with those 3 guys. And so Javon Porter, for those who don't know, is Michael Porter's younger brother. Pepperdine had 3 guys that could put up 15 to 25 a night this year.
Mallet averaged 14.5 and 42% from 3, and Porter averaged about 17 and 6 boards, and both of them are gone. So
yeah, that's interesting news. Javon Porter is a player to watch. I saw Pepperdine a couple times this year. Very impressed with Javon Porter. Also Ajayi, but Ajayi likes to score more around the basket. Porter's more like his brother.
I think Porter looked really good with the ZAGS right around here. ZAGS. We'll take him. We need it. We could use a guy who could knock down a couple shots here.
Oh, yeah. And he's big like his brother. He's got good size like Javon Porter. All right. That's it. Any final thoughts, Drew?
It's the best time of the year, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to be on the road next week with our women's team. Our women's team at Menlo's heading to the national tournament. We got a 5 seed. We actually have a pretty good path to a Sweet 16 bid, I think, through the first weekend. I mean, obviously we got to win. Our men's team, unfortunately, didn't make it. We were the 66th team out of 64. And most of that was because, unfortunately, we lost our first round playoff game. It was basically a win, you're in situation. And we lost by 2.
All right. And I, too, will be on the road, Big East tournament, and most likely the Ivy League tournament. Jake is, I believe, going to be following me around. I think he's going to both as well. Though I don't know if we're going to. Are we speaking to Jake at this point, since he's only on the show like once every 3 months?
I haven't heard from Jake in a while. I do text him. Like, we will like text each other in the group chat every once in a while. We'll like reference, we'll like make a joke, and we'll both like laugh at it.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him. Jake.
All right. So